All right, good evening, everyone. We'll call the meeting to order. Regular Board of Selectmen meeting for September 14th. I'm going to start with roll call. Sean Askham. Hi, Sean. Jackie Bados. Hi, Jackie. Wendy Maxtudis. I think I saw Wendy.
Here.
Do we have Chris yet? Chris Peterson? Mike Paine?
I'm here.
Oh, hi, Mike. Saw Maria Capriola, Melissa Appleby, Mike Glidden, Planning Director. Mike, are you on yet? Oh, there you are. Hi.
Hi, Eric.
Tom Taberski. I'm looking at all the panes here. Get Tom yet? Jeff Shea.
Here.
Jeff. Amy Meriwether.
I'm here.
Hi, Amy.
Hi, guys.
Hey, guys.
Tom Hazel. I saw Chief Bolter. Tom Roy. Hi, Tom.
Hello.
We have Cheri Calnan. Hi, Cheri. And I saw Mark Scully. Hi, Mark.
Eric, hey everybody.
And is Bob DiCrescenzo on yet? He's probably going to join us a little bit later. Is there anyone on who I haven't named?
I'm here, Eric. Lisa Kareem.
Oh, hi, Lisa.
Hi.
All right, why don't we get started? Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America,
United States of America,
to the republic,
and to the republic for which it
one
stands,
nation,
one nation,
God,
under God,
indivisible,
indivisible,
and
with
justice for all.
liberty and justice for all.
So tonight we are going to go a little bit out of order. We typically begin with public audience, but we're going to begin with our presentations tonight because our police chief needs to attend the police commission meeting, which is starting shortly. A little bit of context on the presentation we're going to see tonight. Over the summer, our police chief, in partnership with the police commission, has been conducting a review of police department policies, procedures, and practices. And he developed quite a comprehensive document that I really encourage members of the public who are interested to read. It's been posted on the homepage of the police department's website. And the document describes the current state of the department's practices and policies, especially those that pertain to use of force. And it also has the chief's recommendations for continued areas of focus and improvement. I guess the last thing I would share before the chief's presentation, this is really a partnership, and that's the way that I look at it, between the Board of Selectmen, the Police Commission, our police department, and of course the community. And the community is just a critical piece in all of this work. So without any further ado, I'll turn it over to you, Chief.
Thank you, sir, for that very thorough and accurate description. Joining us tonight is Lieutenant Tom Sheehan as well. I haven't shared a screen before, so I'm going to try to see if this works here, and please let me know if this works.
We gotcha.
Okay, very good. Okay, so through a motion at the Police Commission meeting on June 6th, 2020, I was tasked with conducting a full review of our use of force policy and related policies. I looked at the policies relating to use of force, but also the actual practices, the training, and the complaints about use of force. This final document was accepted by the Police Commission on September 10th, 2020, and as it has been included in the Board of Selectmen packet. It's also available on the Police Department page, as Mr. Wellman had indicated, on the front page of our website. So there are several department policies and procedures that provide guidelines and communicate the values, the philosophy, and culture surrounding expectations and the use of force. At the time of the Police Commission meeting in June, we had 4 directives that directly related to the use of force. Since then, an additional directive titled Use of Force Policy Provision was added to comply with the state mandated requirements enacted in June. For years, our directives were reviewed annually by assessors from CALEA, our national accreditation organization. And now they are reviewed at least every other year by CALEA assessors. They are occasionally reviewed by other departments through a mock assessment process. Each new police officer is required to understand the directives prior to issuance of any weapons or tools. They are reviewed at least once each year by every member, but often multiple times each year. Additionally, our accreditation team reviews the directives every year for necessary changes, and our use of force instructors do the same in preparation for annual trainings. Sworn members attend a 2-day use of force training each year conducted by our instructors. It provides a review of directives and gives opportunities to practice skills and demonstrate proficiencies under varying conditions and situations. It provides for decision-making and role-playing, and it also includes communication and de-escalation skills. In 2019, we implemented annual training for handcuffing. This training is not simply just the mechanics of safe, effective restraints, but also methods to gain compliance, reasonable care for those who are in handcuffs, prevention of positional asphyxia, and recognition and treatment of excited delirium. Just under half of the sworn membership have specialized training called Crisis Intervention Team training. This is a week-long class that focuses on recognition, awareness, de-escalation, problem solving, and temporary resolution strategies and resources to help people going through an emergency crisis. 4 additional officers were scheduled for that same training this year, but that was delayed due to the pandemic. All sworn members receive at least an hour of additional mental health training, and then various opportunities throughout the year on related training that addresses mental health. We attempted to host a Train the Trainer course here for 3 sworn members with LEADS, and LEADS stands for Law Enforcement Active Diffusion Strategies. We tried 2 times within this last year. It was postponed for a lack of enrollment and then once for the pandemic. But it is scheduled again for late this fall. And the intention is to use those trainers that we will have trained to train the entire department. This class is designed for effective communication skills, de-escalation techniques, and physical confrontation avoidance. There are several other training sources, some annual, that are described in analysis. This is just a brief overview of some of the more significant classes that we do on a regular basis. For reporting, our directives require every officer who uses or witnesses another officer use force to complete an electronic incident report and a form called our response to aggression or resistance report, which is often referred to as a use of force report. The state of Connecticut requires reports on the use of force as well. Taser use is reported to the Institute for Municipal and Regional Policy at CCSU, and all uses of force are reported to the state annually to the Office of Policy and Management. The department is required to notify the state's attorney's office if deadly force is used, and that office will conduct a criminal investigation for each use of force that was used. The department conducts an administrative review of each use of force and compiles the data for an annual review. So I hope you can see this, but you may not be able to see it too well, but it's in the chart on page, or I'm sorry, the chart is on page 16 of the document, but it shows the data that we have compiled every single year over the last 5 years. And I will just walk through and highlight just some of those findings over this 5-year analysis. And these are important because this shows the practice along with the actual policy and directives. The numbers in general are relatively low and consistent throughout the years, approximately 12 incidents each year. 70% of the use of force occurred when a person going through a crisis was physically aggressive or resistant. In most of the occurrences, officers used their hands or body and not weapons to respond to the aggression or the resistance. Most of the crises were mental health related, such as suicidal, or involved extreme intoxication from alcohol or drugs. The race and ethnicity of the individuals involved in the use of force over the last 5 years closely mimics the demographics of our community. Our directives do not ban the use of chokeholds or strangulation holds, but our policies show that force in those areas is the use of deadly force. We do not train to use the neck as an area for anything but the use of deadly force. Shooting at moving vehicles has been prohibited by directives for decades, and our current policy on that follows the state model policy and statutes. De-escalation is taught in all of our training and classes that relate to the use of force or the potential use of force, but it's not explicitly required in our directives. Warnings required before shooting is not in our policy, but it is law and has been law for decades. It is in our training. Our directives and training speak to exhausting all alternatives before using any force, but it is not explicit in our directives. Members are instructed about the duty to intervene from the initial police academy through professional development training, but it's not explicit in our directives. Our directives do provide a matrix, not a force continuum, but a matrix, but there's very little explanation about that matrix. And our directives do require comprehensive reporting. And if you are familiar with the 8 Can't Wait campaign, these that you see on the screen before you are those 8. Looked at the complaints on the use of force over the last 5 years, and there were 2. Both of these complaints were fully investigated, although only one complainant wanted an investigation. In 2015, one complainant described manhandling during his resistance, but it was determined through an investigation that it did not occur and the force that was used was reasonable. The other complaint was received in 2016 and involved an officer who spoke to a person in an aggressive manner and put his hand on their shoulder because he was passively resisting. The complainant did not want an investigation, but we did conduct one, and it was determined that the actions were reasonable. After looking at all of this information, I've identified areas that will be considered for future directives. There needs to be consistency among the directives. This will create a better understanding of the standards for use of force, the expectations, the requirements, the restrictions, and the guidance. Requirements to notify supervisors if force is used, or whether or not a supervisor needs to respond to the location needs to be in the directives. It needs to be clear to all of our membership. In addition, timely notifications to command staff needs to be in the directives. Administrative reviews are done for all force that's used. And for several years now, we've done investigations of our use of force. These investigations are beneficial to look at the effective use of force, the reasonableness, training or equipment needs, or other information. We need to establish criteria and procedures for these types of investigations and to have those in the directive as well. The department will have a handcuff directive, which will include authorized use, restrictions, reporting requirements, and care for the person in custody. Although it is our practice, the words and phrases de-escalation and duty to intervene will be in the directives. The matrix for use of force will be a more thorough explanation of force options. And again, although it's in our practice and the law for deadly force, providing a warning to a person when feasible will be in the directives. We are anticipating a mandated statewide policy on use of force. Once that policy is available, the police department and the police commission will move forward to quickly adopt the policy and add components that are necessary for our community. And finally, our policy should be made available online for all to see. And that is the end of my presentation. See if I can stop this share here.
Chief, thank you.
You're welcome.
In less than 15 minutes, you summarized an 80-plus page document, which again, I want to reiterate is on the homepage of the police department's website. I wanted to thank you and the police commission for this work. And now I thought I would open it up for questions from the Board of Selectmen.
Thank you.
Questions from the board?
Well, I was waiting for somebody else to go first, but
Wendy, please.
hey, Chief, thanks for the presentation. That was quite a document.
Thank you.
A lot of detail in there. One area that I just really kind of zeroed in on, I wanted to ask you about is the training that we provide to our officers, and if there really is an impact to the members on the force. And if there's any room to, like you had mentioned, there's a 2-day use of force training that everyone has per each year. Then there's the crisis intervention team, which you said half of the people are trained. I'm assuming we're trying to get everybody trained on that. But a couple things I noticed was there's not a lot of mental health training, which is really all the occurrences of your use of force. So do you see an opportunity there to do anything in that realm? For improvement?
So a lot of our training is not specific to either one technique or one tool. A lot of it is all encompassing. And so I'll just give you for instance, our Project Lifesaver program that we have, which is a device that we are able to give to people who have a tendency to wander. That training is required for every officer. That training is required to be refreshed and redone every 2 years. Along with that training is how to actually use that equipment, and a trial. We go out and we purposely lose one of our members, and you have to try to locate them. But within that training is also how to then interact with people. Person who has wandered away has some other challenges that maybe you and I may not have. And so we learn how to properly bring things to a more comfortable level, what things may be beneficial to say, what things may not be, how should we react, how should we act, all those sort of things. And so that's just one sort of small example of how our mental health training is sort of throughout a lot of our training that we do. We do have instructors here in the department, and Detective Lauren Devon is one of those. And she actually teaches for our annual in-service training that's provided in West Hartford. So all of our members go to this in-service training every single year, and they receive at least the 1 hour minimum requirement that the state imposes on us for a mental health training. But again, that's the 1 hour in that environment. And then with a lot of other classes we have, it is incorporated. I think that looking at our numbers, it wasn't unexpected that 70% involve a person going through a crisis. I think we find that officers, given their either work experiences, their personal experiences, or maybe other professional experiences, have other things that they're able to offer to us. And so we're constantly growing in that manner with mental health. We're always willing to take on some more opportunities to provide more training to the officers. I think we do a very good job at it, but that doesn't mean that we can't provide any more training.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Are there other questions? I just wanted to, thank you, Chief, for, yesterday there was a demonstration, an anti-racism demonstration right in front of Town Hall. And the chief was invited to speak, and he spoke. And I know your words were very well received by the crowd. But one of the things that you encouraged people to do was to have a dialogue to meet with you. And I just want to reiterate how appreciative I am of how accessible you are to our residents. And I would just continue to emphasize that this work is going to be successful when all voices from our community have an opportunity to participate in the dialogue. So thank you for this.
Thank you, sir.
All right, Chief Bolter and Lieutenant Sheehan, thanks so much.
Thank you.
Chief Lieutenant, well done. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Our next presentation tonight is from the Sustainable CT Committee, and a little bit of history here. At the beginning of 2019, so coming up on about a year and a half, the town has been a member of Sustainable CT. We've gone through the certification process based on activities that we've done in the past, and the town achieved a silver rating, which is currently the highest certification that Sustainable CT has. And the committee is looking at creating a roadmap of additional activities and investments that we can make in the space of sustainability. So for this presentation, I wanted to introduce Cheri Calnan, who is the chair of the Sustainability Committee, as well as Mark Scully, who's the chair of the Clean Energy Task Force, and Tom Roy, who is supportive and just an instrumental part of this work. So I don't know who's going to be presenting, but I wanted to recognize all three of you.
Well, I think, Eric, I get the job of just setting up Cheri and Mark, and
Right.
I think just as all throughout this process, it's really been led by their hard work and other works of the committee, and really pushing and getting us farther than we thought we could. So with that, I'd like to turn it over to Cheri, who's just done such a great job chairing and being a champion for this effort.
Hey, thank you. Tom, are we doing the presentation? Are you going to put that up? The
Yes.
slides? Okay.
And just because Tom Fitzgerald is going to be moving the slides forward, so just when you need them to advance, just let him know.
Okay. All right, great. Well, thank you for having us tonight. We wanted to come in and just talk with you about what the goals are that we've established for the committee going forward. We provided you with a report in February of this year that summarized our activities for 2019. And as Eric mentioned, we did a presentation on Sustainable CT to the Board of Selectmen in February of 2019. And they, at that time, passed a resolution to register Simsbury to participate in Sustainable CT. Sustainable CT is a grassroots organization that's based at Eastern Connecticut State University. It's part of a national network that takes a holistic approach to sustainability and recognizes municipalities for the actions that they've taken to make their towns and their communities more sustainable. And so we registered the town, members were appointed, and our first meeting was in April of 2019. We were able to submit our submission in time, which was August 30th of last year. And we knew at first review that we would be able to most likely get a bronze certification, which is the lowest. There's only two that you can achieve. Bronze is the lowest one, and then the next one, the highest one, is the silver. And we were informed in late October of last year that Simsbury was going to receive a silver certification, which was very exciting. And subsequently, we attended, Tom Roy, Maria Capriola, and myself attended the Connecticut Conference of Municipalities at Foxwoods in December, and we received a plaque during the award ceremony, which I'm not sure who has the plaque right now. I'm assuming it's on display at the town hall. So we can go on to the next slide.
Next slide, Tom.
Did it not go to the next slide for you?
It did not.
No.
Okay, give me 1 second. Let me stop sharing and reshare. Okay. Is it there now?
No.
It's still
No.
showing slide 1.
And it's not your full screen.
Interesting. Okay.
We just lost
crap.
it.
Nope. Sorry. One more time. How's that?
There we go. That's it. Okay, so Simsbury Sustainability Committee, I mentioned we submitted our report in August of last year, and there are 169 municipalities in the state of Connecticut. 48 of these received a certification during its inaugural year in 2018. And of the 14 that received silver certification, there were only 9 that got it the first time, and Simsbury was one of them. So, we have a lot to celebrate. We are definitely a sustainable community. We have a lot to offer as far as our decision-making processes regarding sustainability as a mentor for other towns as well. And this is, like I said, the inaugural year was 2018, so we're just now, we'll be finding out the results of this third year. So it's a very new program. It's in its infancy, and by us getting on board early on, we can also help to influence the changes that take place as well. So that's a real benefit, and that's one of the benefits of why we wanted to participate. There were, aside from the recognition, which is certainly important from a promotion standpoint to promote Simsbury as a sustainable community, the benefits that were recognized with this program is that it enhances communication and collaboration amongst the different committees and commissions in town, as well as with other communities. It allows us to share information and ideas and collaborate, maybe even share on some of the programs or actions you can do collaboratively with another town or region. And so in addition, it engages the community to participate with this program as well. So it hits so many prongs, if you will, that are important to bringing the community together and everybody being on the same page and having the same values as it relates to all of the different actions, which is really covering a number of different areas that you typically wouldn't think of when you're talking about sustainability. As I mentioned, it's a holistic approach. We can go to the next slide, Tom. So I just wanted to share with you who is on the committee, the different committees and commissions that are represented in this group. We have myself and Mark Scully, along with Jeff Tindo, who is now the chairperson for the Facilities and Enrollment Task Force, as well as the Board and Ed. Sarah Kramer, who's Culture, Parks and Rec Commission. Rich Cortez, who is with the Planning Commission. Mary Turner on the Recycling Committee. Tim Wozniak, who's on Open Space Committee and the Clean Energy Task Force. Mike Tanka, who's with the Clean Energy Task Force. And Bob Kraunser, who is with the Economic Development Commission as chairperson. And I would say that we, through the certification process, discovered that we could probably use some additional members in some areas. Perhaps maybe it's up for discussion, to determine which groups should be represented in this. But definitely, I think there are some that are not here currently that we could use their help and information and expertise on. one of the areas that we discovered through our certification process is that our town does not have a poet laureate. And so that's something that we would like to pursue, having a poet laureate for Simsbury. And I forgot to mention here, though, is that the Sustainability Committee is under the umbrella of the Clean Energy Task Force. So the Clean Energy Task Force works with Tom Roy, who is the staff liaison, and as well as with the Board of Selectmen. So he communicates for us in that way and supports our efforts. His office supports our efforts. Tom, we can go on to the next page. Okay, great. Thank you. So these are some of the areas where we were able to submit information in our report, from environmental impacts and greenhouse gas emissions, biodiversity, cultural ecosystems, inclusive and equitable community impacts, climate resilience. I mean, so you can see here, I mean, it's a very well-rounded approach to sustainability. And I'm showing here some photographs that were submitted in our report, from the rainbow crosswalk to the solar panels on the ice rink up at the Simsbury Farms. And we also highlighted the MLK Memorial initiatives with the MLK in Connecticut program. I also wanted to just mention quickly that, and I'll dive into this a little further, but the support that we get through this program, you know, the program itself is a no-cost program. There's no cost to register. There's no cost to certify. There's no cost for any of the support that they offer. They provide Sustainable CT provides education, a lot of educational support, webinars, and it's available to not only our community, or our committee, I should say, but to our entire community, including all of the folks that are on the Board of Selectmen and the town staff. There's all kinds of training workshops, and coming up in October, there's going to be, for Selectmen specifically, a training workshop to prevent homelessness. They also provide a number of workshops and trainings on equity. And one of the things that happened with our certification process is that we were assigned an equity coach who came and spoke with our committee and talked with us about the process of equitable decision making, which was great. I mean, it was a great conversation. It was really beneficial. And it is really kind of the foundation of the actions going forward for 2021. Tom, we can go into the next slide, please. So I think it's a little difficult to see this, the images on the slide, but to the right, the map is what you would see if you go on to the Sustainable CT website, and you can look up the report that we provided, our submission. You can look up any town that is registered. If they have received a bronze or silver certification, you can look that up as well. And you can look up the entire report, or you can look it up specifically to a particular action. So here is where Simsbury is a mentor to other communities, other municipalities that are looking to get certified in Connecticut. They can click on to see what we've provided for a particular action. To the left, it highlights the 9 actions that the certification program consists of, and then there's sub-actions to each one of those actions. So it gets a little involved. Just at a glance, you think it's pretty simple, but as you start to work your way through it, it does start to get much more involved. in terms of what we need to provide. But as I mentioned, 21 is going to bring in more education and awareness on homelessness prevention, a continuation of equity training and awareness. We're also going to be seeing more efforts on pollinator pathways, in addition to more housing options, regional collaboration, and there is no gold level, though, for 21, but possibly in 22 there will be another level for us to pursue. We can go on to the next slide, Tom. The committee resumed its meetings in July via Zoom, as we are doing now. And so we were unable to meet for, I guess, about 3 or 4 months, which delayed us getting all of this information together as far as what we wanted to pursue. But because of the coronavirus, we decided to just pursue setting goals for the upcoming year rather than extend it out further, just because things are so fluid, not knowing what might be coming up as winter progresses. But we, in the past year, collaborated with various folks within town to discuss the goals. For instance, with Eric, we talked with Eric a couple of times to discuss the goals of the Board of Selectmen. Sarah Kramer and I met with Nancy Grandin and talked about the New England pollinators. I had a meeting with the Farmington River Watershed Association, as well as with Susan Messino on woodlands and woodland care. And then we had presentations to the Economic Development Commission, and I believe there was a presentation made to the Planning Commission. So we're trying to allow, present our committee as a resource to the other committees as well, to assist them in what their goals may be, wherever we possibly can. Next slide, Tom. So one of the things that we would really like to do is to create a student subcommittee or group. We would like to have this be comprised of students who are residents of Simsbury, but maybe a student outside of Simsbury, or a current student within one of the Simsbury schools, the Simsbury Public Schools, as well as Westminster, Ethel Walker, the Master School. So we really wanted to make this a nice collaboration of all the schools. And what we want to find out is, what the process is to get the permission from the Board of Selectmen to be able to do this, and also what the formalities would be, if it would be an informal club, or would we treat it as a formal subcommittee with Robert's rules. One of the ideas that we had was to have a Earth Day celebration in April, and that would be something that we could collaborate with the students on. Kim Walziak, who is part of our committee, is also a science teacher at the middle school and has volunteered to head up this group. We'd like to start meeting as soon as possible, but are looking to you folks to let us know what the process is to do this. The next page. Tom, the next. Oh, thank you. Another initiative we'd like to take on is water conservation. We'd like to try to create some specific goals of voluntary reduction, collaborate with potential collaborators such as the Terriffill Water Authority, the Avon Water, Farmington River Watershed Association, Aquarian, and of course, Simsbury Public Works. We'd like to be able to provide some type of education, workshops. The Farmington River Watershed Association has a number of resources that we could tap into, possibly such as downspout kits, signage, rain gardens. And Mike Tanka, who is on our committee and also on the Clean Energy Task Force, has volunteered to take up this initiative. And he has a background right now as a board member on the Terriffill Water Commission. He's also an engineer by profession, and I think is an excellent person to take this on for us. Tom, we can go on to the next slide. So at this point, I'm going to turn it over to Mark Scully to present this information to you.
Great, thank you, Cheri. So again, focusing on going forward, what the sustainability team is focusing on in the area of energy. A couple things going on. One of the first priorities for clean energy and energy efficiency needs to be efficiency. It's the first fuel, and before we try to find ways to produce more clean energy, we should first try to reduce what we're consuming. And there's this program called Home Energy Solutions, or HESS audits that people can get at home. You may have heard that HESS audits are now free to customers. There used to be a copay. That copay has fluctuated over time. That's now zero. And some of the incentives, some of the rebates for insulation, for example, are extremely good right now. So towns are doing things like running campaigns to make sure people are aware that these audits are available and how valuable they are. So that's something we'll actually be looking at in detail next week at our meeting. We, a couple of years ago, did an energy benchmarking of Simsbury. I think we presented that to the Board of Selectmen, essentially assessing for the entire town how much energy we are consuming from our municipality to businesses to residents, including heating and cooling, transportation, electricity, everything. We want to update that, and so we're in the process of doing that right now to track our energy use, particularly in light of what our goals are. One of the things that we've talked about doing, and we're going to maybe ask for some support from the Board of Selectmen on this, is to do an even more detailed, what's called a greenhouse gas inventory, looking at how much energy we use and what volume of greenhouse gas we are producing, and do it in enough detail that you can actually see where it's coming from and what are some ways we could go about reducing that. So there's a couple of tools that we're looking at for doing that type of analysis. And we're happy to do as much as we can, but of course that's going to draw some staff resources for getting the information. So we just wanted to flag that one now. Another issue that we want to pick back up is a shared solar facility. You may have heard of the shared solar program in Connecticut, where if you can't get solar on your roof for whatever reason, we put a big solar array on the landfill, and then people can subscribe to that. They can essentially reduce their own bills, or essentially be consuming clean energy from that shared facility. We had a proposal into the pilot for Connecticut a few years ago. It did not get accepted in the pilot, but that state program is now much larger. So we have this proposal, this project that is pretty much shovel ready. So we'd like to dust that off and then put that out to a competitive bid for the next round of this shared solar program, or at least take a look, see if it's feasible. The other issue that some of you may be familiar with, because it was in our energy plan, is the idea of an energy manager in town. And we've seen in other towns that the types of activities an energy manager can carry out often more than pay for their salary or their fees. So maybe short of hiring an energy manager, we'd like to put up the idea of an energy manager consultant that would be available for the town. And we think there's some really fruitful activities that manager could do that would not only reduce our energy, but save money for the town. So you see these beautiful pictures from a thermal imaging showing you where in the house the heat is being retained and where it's leaking. So that's an example of the kind of thing you can see from an energy efficiency audit. We'll go to the next slide, Tom.
And actually, while they're changing slides, and I know we're a little short on time, we actually have a thermal camera that can be borrowed from our library that would provide people that same imagery of their own house to find out where they might be leaking energy and wasting money. But
great. So this page covers the activities that that the sustainability team wants to focus on going forward in the area of the schools. These activities are led by Jeff Tyndall, so he's the expert there. But Just briefly, we have a terrific opportunity with this facilities master plan, both for the Board of Ed and for the town, that will be doing some renovations, perhaps some new building. It's a terrific opportunity to do that in a sustainable way. So the sustainability team and the Clean Energy Task Force simply would like to be a resource. So we'd like to be at the table and be involved early enough that when we're looking at ways of doing construction or renovation, that we can get some ideas on the table for things like a high performance building, perhaps a net zero construction, perhaps solar on the roof when you're doing it. So, and you can see, I won't go through in detail, but there's a list of other activities that we are happy to really work with the Board of Ed on, and we're fortunate to have Jeff Tyndall leading that. Great. That's so we'll go to the next slide and back to Cheri.
Okay. Additionally, we want to continue to support our well-stewarded land, natural resources, and wildlife, as well as resilient planning. So we would like to continue to be a resource regarding information and education to promote whatever it is that these commissions are looking to whatever they're looking to do as far as their goals. And, I think one of the biggest areas that we hear a lot about lately is invasive species, learning about management and elimination in certain areas, to continue with the low impact development and our resiliency as a community, and focus also on some inventories that maybe where we don't have inventory for maybe in natural wildlife, for instance. I know that, we have inventories in some areas, but not necessarily in every area. And of course, we want to continue with promoting biodiverse forestry as well. So we can go on to the next slide, Tom. The Recycling Committee has opened up the swap shop in July, and they are seeking additional helpers. They can have students work there, but they do need to be supervised by an adult, a parent preferably, or perhaps one of the other committee members that are working. They continue to donate items to Habitat for Humanity and are exploring the composting program, perhaps for schools with a partnership with local farms. In addition to possibly looking at a textile recycling program, although there seems to be some issues right now with the recycling facilities, but we do continue to explore that. Their fillet program is currently on hold due to the coronavirus, so hopefully that is something that can get going again, once things are settled down with regards to the coronavirus. Tom, we can go into the next page. The Economic Development Commission has been spending time supporting the local businesses during the COVID-19. They have been promoting the businesses as far as like with the restaurants, letting people know what shops are open on the Facebook pages, and supporting the food bank, which is incredibly valuable now more than ever. The operation is open every 3 weeks versus one time per month, and really needs support. The Economic Development Commission is also focused on the entrepreneur. So it's not only keeping our businesses open, but also to continue to lure more businesses to open up in our town. And they do this through collaboration with Main Street Partnership and the Chamber of Commerce, as well as the Tourism Committee. Tom, we can go into the next page. And promotion and education, we would like to be able to possibly have our own Facebook page so that we can announce events or at least share information as it relates to sustainability. We'd like to be able to get feedback from the town as far as what's important to other residents. We would like to do some fundraising. There's a community match fund, which is a crowdfunding source that will match dollar for dollar up to a certain point. so that we can get some funds to promote and do the Earth Day that we'd like to do in April. One idea is possibly to sell some recycled straws, but in addition, whatever funds we have would be able to get us up and going, up and running. We are looking to collaborate, as Mark was talking about with the educational seminars, looking to collaborate with the library as well as with SCTV with our educational webinars and lectures so that it's available to the entire community. And I think that that's probably the one thing that's really important to us for this year is education about this, what we're doing, but also to find out what is important to the folks within our town as well. Next slide. And I'm going to turn it over to Tom Roy.
All right, home stretch, everybody. I know it's been, you guys got a full agenda, so we're just going to kind of hit the highlights of how sustainability really benefits Simsbury. And as Cheri said, the Sustainable CT Initiative is great and it's very holistic. In a lot of ways, the projects that we focused on over the last few years on the town have focused on reducing energy and saving money. A couple of you were around last year for when we did the ribbon cutting up at the Simsbury Farms solar array. My favorite saying of all is using the sun to make ice. That facility now that has been operational for over a year is saving us $12,000 a year on that facility. It's generating 84% of the facility's energy. And what's even more exciting is all summer long, kids and families using the pool get to see that. And I think it's a really attractive location for solar panels. They blend in with the roof lines. And if anything, we should probably take a little bit more effort to promote how much energy that's generating for that facility. Not nearly as exciting over at the Public Works facility. Nobody comes to visit us. And it's not going to be Architectural Digest, but on that facility, which services our DPW, our highway, our custodians, and also the Board of Ed custodians, we're saving $22,000 a year by having the solar array on top of our facility. And I cannot stress enough that these arrays were built with absolutely zero out-of-pocket money from the town of Simsbury. Next slide, please. All right. A couple years ago, back in 2017, we purchased all of the streetlights in Simsbury. Simsbury doesn't have a lot of streetlights compared to other towns. As you can see from the chart, the blue line is what we had been paying, and year over year, we were paying more and more money each and every year. After purchasing them, we went from spending about $140,000 a year to spending somewhere in the $25,000 to $27,000 a year range. In doing that, we also took over the responsibility for the maintenance. I think we've actually been able to provide a better level of service to our residents. When they call now and tell me that a street light's out, we call our vendor and we fix it. Where in the past, we would be an intermediary to Eversource, and at times streetlights were not fixed in a timely manner, and we certainly didn't have control of the process. So saving $115,000 per year on average, which is about 15% more than what we had originally estimated. Next slide, Tom. Last but not least, we're not done. Right now, we're in the process of looking at doing lighting retrofits for Simsbury Farms, the library, and town hall. Just 7 or 8 years ago, we did lighting retrofits at the library and town hall, and already the technology has changed so much that, again, no out-of-pocket expense to the town. We're going to put in new energy-efficient, high-quality LED lights, and we're looking at annual savings, as you can see there, $9,000 at the farms, $20,000 at the public library, and a little over $13,000 at town hall. It's just an exciting way that we can both be sustainable and we can be economically sensitive. So I think that wraps us up. I know it was a little bit longer than some of us were hoping for, but I think the entire sustainability team has really put in a lot of energy and effort. And I think they just had a lot to talk about in terms of 18 months of really hard work. And they owe so much credit to getting us to that highest level that you can achieve in the first year. I think one of only 9 towns that did that in the first year. So congratulations to Cheri and the team.
Nice. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Are there questions from the board? Well, I often hold up this committee as just one of the highest functioning town committees. you get stuff done, and this is a perfect example. So thank you so much for this comprehensive.
Yeah, unreal, guys, unreal. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity. And hey, we acknowledged all the work that the town has done. So it's everybody in the town and all the volunteers are the ones who put really this report together in essence. So kudos to everybody.
Thanks for all the work. Have a good night.
Thanks, Sharon.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
So we're going to move on to public audience, and we now have 2 ways to participate in public audience. You can register to join the Zoom meeting and speak to us directly, or you can continue to do what we've done for much of the spring and summer, where you email your comments to our town clerk, Erica Butler, and we'll read them into the record. We have our very first person, though, who is going to join us live tonight, and that is Dave Bush from the Culture Parks and Rec Commission. Dave, you with us?
Wow, the special introduction to be the first guy live on tonight. So I first of all, I always want to thank all of you for everything you do. I've just seen the amount of time you spend volunteering for the town, and it is greatly, greatly appreciated. I am going to talk on only one issue on your agenda. It is the Selectmen Action L, the disposition of the open space on the regarding 133 Holcomb Street. I thought this frankly was important enough that I didn't want to submit just written commentary. As you folks may know, again, I'm chairman of Park and Rec. I'm also an open space committee member, so I've had an opportunity to learn about this acquisition in great detail. And I'm here to support the acquisition of this property and to implore you to please do so, but really more from a Park and Rec side than from an open space side. So by way of background, it makes clear in your presentation, the information, I guess it's called what, Maria, the Board of Selectmen meeting submission form. I didn't think it was perhaps entirely accurate that this is connecting the East Coast Greenway to Simsbury. And that is essential that everybody understands that, because we are a linchpin in this particular wonderful project that goes from Florida all the way to Maine. And in particular, I would encourage any of the commission members to go to, I want to make sure I get it right, if you go to map.greenway.org for Connecticut, you're going to see that this trail didn't go along the coastline where you'd think, God, why wouldn't we go along the coastline? It actually comes right up the corridor from New Haven. And you know where it takes a right turn? Simsbury. It literally takes a right turn in Simsbury. So here's why this is important. Maria's submission says that the sale was requested by an abutting property owner, i.e., we all know Steve Antonio, as part of discussions related to the potential purchase of an easement of the at the old well property in Terriffill. So I am advocating that you do this particular transaction for one simple reason. We cannot connect our rails to trails and the East Coast Greenway through Simsbury without that property. It's that important. It is so significant that this is not opening the floodgates to open space acquisition. We aren't looking to do that. I'm not looking to do that in Park and Rec. I'm not looking to do that as part of open space. What I am looking to do, we have a unique opportunity. This is such an isolated transaction. This is going not to be the model of, oh, gee, everyone's worried we're going to dispose of property. We aren't. We are not looking to dispose of open space. What we are looking to do, I went down to the 350-year celebration. Do you know there's half a banner dedicated to the fact that we're a bike-friendly community and also mentions the Greenway? Well, I don't know that we can, if our historians and our historical fathers felt it was appropriate to do these kind of things, we need to do it now as well. Is that we are going to lose an opportunity to get the one place the town has identified as the most safe way to connect these properties is on that easement. So I implore you to please, one, consider the transaction, but number two, the transaction must be a transaction where the easement is part of it. So ready? If Steve Antonio wants to have this property and we're going to sell it to him without any other conditions, unacceptable. What it must be is we have an opportunity to get an easement to really do what's important to the town, and that we won't have any other opportunity to do other than through an adversarial process, which nobody wants. So that's why I took the time tonight. I want to thank you for your time and appreciate the opportunity to have public comment.
Hey, thank you for your service to our town and your time being here tonight. Appreciate it.
Good luck, gang.
So if anyone else wants to get in on public comment in our meetings, you can send an email to Tom Fitzgerald ahead of our meeting, tfitzgerald@simsbury-ct.gov, and you can participate that way. Or you can email your comments to our town clerk, Erica Butler, ebutler@simsbury-ct.gov, and we will read them just as we're about to do. So I'll read the first one, and then Sean will pick up the next one. This first email is from Benjamin Berger. I write in my capacity as the president of the Simsbury Soccer Club to address the ongoing discussion by the Board of Selectmen, Board of Finance, and Parks and Rec Commission regarding the potential purchase of open space known as the Meadowwood site. SSC has long been a supporter of increasing the available athletic fields in town, and we're excited by the prospect of potentially adding fields as part of the Meadowwood proposal. Each year, close to 1,000 children participate in SSC programming at various fields around the town of Simsbury. While we're fortunate to have a top-of-the-line facility at Curtis Park, the sheer number of our organization require constant management to find adequate field space for all of the programming. This is especially so since certain locations, example, Iron Horse, are no longer available to SSC because of the recent increase in fall events around town. We have been fortunate to have excellent partnerships with the town's outstanding Culture, Parks and Rec department. Through their effort and our ongoing field management initiatives, we've been able to preserve and improve Curtis despite heavy use during the fall, spring, and summer seasons. However, the addition of new field space in town is crucial to ensuring the long-term viability of our existing facilities. The remarkable circumstances of the last 7 months have certainly re-emphasized the importance of recreation, competition, and athletics. The overwhelming response to our return to play initiatives this summer/fall have made the significance of youth sports to the families in our community abundantly clear. Youth athletics is a significant component of life in our town, and the opportunity to add additional fields to support such programming is one that SSC definitively supports. I ask that you forward this correspondence to members of the Board of Selectmen, Board of Finance, and Parks and Rec Commission. If I can provide any additional information, please don't hesitate to contact me. Signed, Benjamin Berger.
Eric, I believe I've got the next one, right? All right, so this one's from Brian Bulger. I'm writing on behalf of the Simsbury Youth Lacrosse SYL to express support of the athletic field space that may be made possible through the acquisition of land associated with the Meadowwood site project. I've had the pleasure of serving in various leadership roles within SYL for the past decade. During that time, the single largest recurring issue that we've contended with is field availability. During this spring, boys in our program utilize fields at Henry James Memorial School, girls utilize fields at Iron Horse. Well, we're fortunate to have access to these locations and appreciate everything the staff of Parks and Rec does to support SYL. Both locations present challenges. We contend with field conditions at HJMS and the lack of consistent field access due to conflicts with fairs, events at Iron Horse, and other youth and high school teams, rugby and field hockey, requiring access to fields at HJMS. We anticipate ongoing field access issues and conflicts as Simsbury population expands and more children elect to participate in the growing number of athletic programs which are offered. We have long supported the concept of acquiring land with the intent of developing a dedicated multi-sport athletic complex. I'm confident that converting land associated with the Meadowwood site would provide exceptional value to the student athletes of SYL and the hundreds of families and players that participate in other youth sports in Simsbury. I respectfully request that you provide this letter to the appropriate members of the Board of Selectmen, Board of Finance, and Parks and Rec Commission for consideration as they deliberate critical decisions related to the Meadowwood site. I appreciate your consideration and feel free to contact me with any questions that may arise. Respectfully submitted, Brian Bulger.
Okay. I've asked Wendy to read the next letter from Joan Coe.
Okay. I am reading this verbatim and I printed it so I could see it much better. There was a special meeting of the Board of Selectmen at 8 a.m. August 28th, 2020 to approve gathering permits for events on Zoom. With an open mic before the Zoom meeting, Sean Askham, Deputy Selectman, was heard discussing the incident of a wedding party in a horse-drawn carriage at the Flower Bridge in Simsbury, where the horse was spooked and bolted from the carriage and landed in a ditch. This incident looked like a combat zone with blood everywhere. Deputy Selectman Sean Askham, the spin meister for Town Manager Maria Capriola, stated that we can't really tell people they can't use public space. There were about 50 people in attendance, a red flag for a gathering permit. Why have a special meeting to approve gathering permits for events if anyone can use a public space? The incident was posted on Facebook from residents in the area. All gathering permits originate in the office of Tom Taberski, Recreation Director. The horse and carriage were rented from Allegro Farms in East Haddam. A private duty Simsbury police officer was assigned to the event and a case was generated, case 31283. Tom Taberski, Recreation Director, appears to have given tacit approval for the event. Tom Taberski, Recreation Director for Simsbury, was the point person, allegedly giving permission for the activity. The process was not followed, and when contacted, the health department and planning department were unaware of the activity, although they should have been notified, especially during a COVID-19 pandemic with social distancing. According to town policy, all events on town property should get gathering permits. Deputy Selectman Sean Askham should know the policies he approves to protect the town and the promoters of the events from litigation. Tom Taberski appears to have had a momentary lapse in judgment, quote, placing the town at risk. However, this is not the only, quote, lapse in judgment. Quote. A grievance by Taryn Schrader, recreation employee, was filed on June 25th, 2019, stating that the grievant, this is also in quotes, was discriminated against on the basis of her sex, specifically because of pregnancy, childbirth, and or related to medical conditions, such as expressing milk at work in violation of Connecticut's Article 16 and the Pregnancy Discrimination Act of 1978, a federal law, and Connecticut's Act concerning pregnant women in the workplace. Taryn Schrader received a settlement of $13,725 from the town. Social distancing at the Simsbury Farms golf course was violated with 2 people on a cart and players next to one another. No social distancing. Black Lives Matter sign at Simsbury Farms golf course is a political sign that should not have been approved by Tom Taberski. Tom Taberski was the only employee that sent a letter to First Selectman Eric Wellman urging the Board of Selectmen to renew Town Manager Maria Capriola's contract. Tom Taberski's letter states she, parentheses, Town Manager Maria Capriola, others parentheses, is an incredibly hardworking individual and sets a high bar for the rest of the Town of Simsbury team while being compassionate about her staff maintaining a positive work-life balance. Has Tom Taberski exemplified the high bar that Town Manager Maria Capriola has set for the Simsbury employees? The Police State Board of Mediation and Arbitration has made a decision that the town had just cause to terminate Sergeant Tromley. This was an unprecedented dissenting opinion. The Police State Board of Mediation, with 3 hearing officers, has heard the pleadings over several months with a 2-1 decision. The members are appointed by the governor. Sergeant Tromley was terminated for untruthfulness on a rumor that was reported to Chief Bolter that Chief Bolter would like several officers leave the department. The Police Commission terminated Sergeant Tromley on November 6, 2019, after a lengthy public disciplinary hearing on the recommendations of Chief Bolter. The termination of Sergeant Tromley has affirmed the no confidence vote in Chief Bolter, with police morale at an all-time low. Justice was not served. The decision was politically motivated. On August 22nd, 2020, First Selectman Eric Wellman was protesting with a sign in front of the Simsbury Post Office to save the Simsbury Post, the SPS. The poster, it says show poster, but I don't have the poster, that Wellman was holding looked like it was made in haste and was unprofessional. The taxpayers of Simsbury did not pay First Selectman Eric Wellman's salary to take a political position. First Selectman Eric Wellman is paid $10,000 a year to serve the Simsbury community. First Selectman Eric Wellman's report to the Personnel Committee of the Board of Selectmen with typo errors states that 3 to 5 times a year, Wellman purchases coffee, donuts, and bagels for various gatherings. Is this the appropriate use of Wellman's salary? Are the Simsbury taxpayers paying First Selectman Eric Wellman to make political statements, apparently adding to his resume when he decides to run for governor? All of my comments will be posted on Simsbury Patch, Twitter @JoanCo, and Facebook.
Thank you, Wendy. I'm reading next letter from Stephen Antonio. Hi, and thank you for allowing my comments during public audience. I see that disposition regarding the orphan parcel behind my home and 133 Holcomb Street is on the agenda for this evening. I appreciate the amount of time and effort many members of the town staff, as well as the boards have played. Boards have put into vetting our offer to regain our orphan parcel. I am proud that we have been transparent during every step of this path that has involved many discussions and meetings over the last 2 years. I kindly submit the following summary regarding this topic. The concept of reabsorbing this orphaned parcel into the original parcel has been deliberated and approved by every board it's been presented to, in particular the Planning Commission, the Conservation Commission, and the Open Space Committee. At the present time, there are no building restrictions on this land, and I'm offering to permanently restrict the potential for development on it in the form of a conservation easement for all eternity. The fact that no one can access this particular orphaned parcel without trespassing over my private property is not my fault, and if anything, underscores the reason why we are pursuing this orphaned parcel be reabsorbed into our original parcel. In fact, the majority of the orphaned parcel cannot even be viewed except from our house. The sale of this orphaned parcel will place it on the tax rolls and yield the town income. We have spoken with all abutting neighbors as well as those within our local area, and the response has been completely supportive of this transfer. The transfer of this small parcel shifts the burden of maintenance and liability onto us. This thin, crooked finger of land that stretches down into and between 2 parcels we own hinders our ability to fence in our adjoining lots for our sheep to graze upon. I'm offering the full market value for this land, an amount professionally calculated by an independent appraiser and then confirmed and validated by our town assessor. I would be remiss not to acknowledge the natural knee-jerk response that a few people in town have had regarding this transaction. I'd like to reiterate that this is not a ridiculous proposition, such as we should sell random amounts of our town-owned open space. It is about one specific orphaned parcel. It is truly unfortunate that the town had a bad policy that created 22 orphaned parcels, but ignorance does not make it okay to continue to turn a blind eye as to what to do about them. Each orphan parcel has a story of its own, and there are times when it makes good sense for the town to let the orphan space go back to an abutting private property owner and onto the tax rolls. A wise person listens before rushing to judgment, allowing them to make a rational decision, inclusive of research and establishing a dialogue for the best resolution for the community as a whole. I appreciate the time and energy so many people have put towards keeping Simsbury beautiful, and we are proud to also be stewards of our open spaces as we move forward. Sean, do you have the next one from Lisa Antonio?
I do. This next one's from Lisa Antonio. So I'm back one last time to request that the board respectfully vote yes and allow my family to purchase the orphan parcel behind our house in today's vote. I cannot stress enough how meaningful this decision is to the comfort and well-being of our home. It is just weird that we have a crooked orphaned parcel in our backyard when we own the surrounding property and only my family can easily access it or even view it. It's frustrating that we cannot enclose our field for our sheep to graze because of the orphan parcel in our backyard. I'll spare you the details about why the town zoning commission forced this orphan parcel to be created in the first place and why zoning later changed the rules to avoid creating more non-strategic scattered orphan parcels around town. Obviously, the town figured out that orphan parcels don't create value or achieve the goals of open space, which today are accomplished in other ways. Thank you for your time and thoughtful consideration. Sincerely, Lisa Antonio.
And this final letter tonight comes from Maria Ecke, It reads, Mr. Wellman, I believe that Joan Coe and I filed an ethics complaint about Simsbury ethics on March 2nd, 2019. My complaint was never addressed to my satisfaction. You may answer my ethics complaint by email, and she provides her email, and read the complaint again at the next Board of Selectmen meeting. I'm sure that my speech is still in the Simsbury Public Television archives. As an old, disabled librarian, I do not have a scanner, a new computer, or a cell phone to use, but I will try to refresh your memory with a copy of my speech at a later date. In my opinion, everything in Simsbury is done in an unethical way, starting with having a meeting to discuss Maria Capriola's salary increase on Valentine's Day, Wednesday, March 14th, 2018, at 7:30 a.m. with just 4 people present, a newly hired town manager, and a personnel subcommittee consisting of Democratic Chair First Selectman Eric Wellman, an unpaid Democratic Deputy Selectman Chris Kelly, and an unpaid Republican Selectman Sean Askham. I'm guessing that if the public knew what was being discussed, it was an open meeting that was at a reasonable hour to the general public, and what the consequences of a raise to the newly hired town manager would be to taxpayers, people would attend and voice our concerns about the newly hired Simsbury town manager. Also, I question the ethics of the town of Simsbury, in which I addressed in an email to Joanne Martin on March 2nd, 2019, where I asked the town manager the question, what authority does Eric Gomes have to monitor the town manager's office? That email was never answered at all, but somehow Joanne Martin was not there anymore. The incorrect internal report by the Simsbury Police Department may still be available. I have a copy of it also. No wonder I'm afraid of the Simsbury Police Department. I had only tried to get a complaint form about an incident that happened when Police Chief Inverson was still on duty about the untimely death of my son. All of a sudden, the Simsbury Police, consisting of a policewoman and a policeman, marched upstairs from the Simsbury Police Department to escort me out. Once again, what kind of authority does Eric Gomes have to call the Simsbury Police on a taxpayer? In my opinion, this was revenge on his part, since I was questioning his newly created job in 2010. I question the ethics of the town of Simsbury once again in the hiring of Captain Bolter to be the police chief. In my opinion, he does not perform in the office as chief of police in an appropriate manner. He did not answer my questions in a meeting which I called about the death of my son when he was a Captain Bolter on Thursday, December 15th, 2016 at 1 p.m. Once again, I question the ethics of the town of Simsbury in regards to the job of the town assessor. Where's Mr. Gardner? I'll answer that question myself. He's the newly hired tax assessor in the lovely town of Farmington, where staff answer the phone. It seems that many town employees in the state of Connecticut can answer phones, but Simsbury town employees cannot answer phones to answer questions from the Simsbury tax-paying residents. Mr. Gardner is a good, fair tax assessor, so why is he gone? Could that be the unfair cronyism that I talked about in Board of Selectmen speech on December 16, 2019? Where are the ethics in the town of Simsbury when an elected town official, probate judge Cynthia Beck, dismisses a grieving mother of a child by giving her only 1 month of medical records? After I paid yet another fee to the state of Connecticut so that probate judge Becker would only give me 1 month of the doctor's medical records. Could the doctor have been a friend of hers? I still have a few years and a few months to file another grievance about her. Signed, Maria Ecke. We are going to move on to the first Selectmen's report, followed by the town manager's report. I just have a few items. The first is participation in the upcoming 2020 general election. Wanted to share that there are 2 ways to vote in the general election in November on, in person on November 3rd or by absentee ballot. Because of the COVID-19 pandemic, anyone can vote absentee this year. The Secretary of State's office is mailing absentee ballot applications to all registered voters. The applications can be returned in a prepaid envelope or dropped off at Town Hall in the official election drop box outside. The Secretary of State's office has started mailing applications in the past week, and ballots will be mailed starting on October 2nd to people who submit an application. The deadline to register for the November 3rd election is October 27th, 2020, register to vote. There is a 7-day registration blackout period before the election. If you miss the October 27th deadline, you may register and vote by personally appearing at the town's designated election day voter registration station. In this case, it's our library. Proof of identity and residence is required. You can find many answers to questions about the upcoming election on the Registrar of Voters page. That's on the town website. From that page, you can confirm if you're registered to vote. You can confirm your polling location. You can download and print an absentee ballot application, and much more. The 350th Anniversary Committee has unveiled a history walk, 350 Years of Simsbury in 350 Steps. Located along the Greenway next to the Performing Arts Center, the history walk tells the story of Simsbury with pictures, dates, and fun facts. The history walk is a collaboration with the Simsbury Historical Society, the Simsbury Free Library, and the Simsbury Meadows Performing Arts Center. And because of COVID, the 350th committee has had to reschedule and reimagine many of the planned celebrations. You can find the latest at simsbury350.com. There's also an online store where you can purchase 350 merchandise. Lastly, I wanted to congratulate our 2020 hometown heroes. Every year since 1986, the town has celebrated its hometown heroes, residents who, through a deed or service, make our town a better place to live. Each spring, we accept nominations, and our ceremony was delayed this year because of COVID. But I did want to congratulate our 2020 hometown heroes, Jean Miles, Katie Kostolnik, Margaret Diachenko, Ann Long, Rob Cushman, Jim Fleming, and Gail Ryan. And I'll turn it over to Maria, who has the town manager's report.
An excellent update, Governor.
Thanks, Sean.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you. So first, just a quick update on our coronavirus response. At this time, staff is reporting to duty, but we are taking appointments for access to the various buildings at this point in time. So that includes Town Hall, the library, and Eno. So we are doing our best to work with the public health information that we have available to us. And we are taking a cautious approach to reopening Town Hall, our library, and Eno to walk-ins. Many of those buildings truly are community gathering places for folks, including some of our seniors who are most at risk under current, again, CDC and public health guidelines we're receiving from our state and local officials. So again, we are taking a very cautious approach to reopening the buildings to walk-ins. We are reevaluating that every 2 weeks as part of the leadership team's response to our virus recovery. Of our facilities, we still believe that the senior center will likely be the last of our public buildings to reopen to walk-ins. The library is continuing to do curbside pickup for materials. They are expanding to evening hours on Tuesdays, and we have provided information in the report for people to be able to sign up for curbside pickup of materials. Many of our facilities have reopened with modified practices such as our transfer station and many of our recreational facilities. As a reminder, as of today, we were temporarily suspending the acceptance of cash payments. We are asking the Board of Selectmen at your meeting tonight to extend that through January 1st. Staff did have a very positive experience with that. We actually only received one complaint during all of tax season about not accepting cash. So being able to accept payment by check, through the mail, through the Dropbox, online, whether through debit card or credit card, did work very successfully. And we do believe that it helped cut down on the transactional nature of much of the work that required, physical contact between our staff and customers. So we are hoping to, again, extend that through January 1st. Many of our town agencies are continuing to hold their meetings virtually. We are reevaluating that. We did just this evening see some updated guidance from the governor's office regarding that. We will be reviewing that with our town attorney and reevaluating when we may be able to reopen our meetings to the public and begin holding meetings in person again. Just a reminder, we have been receiving inquiries from residents in terms of how they can help. And our food programs are entirely supported by donations. So we are very appreciative of folks who are willing to donate non-perishable food items, toiletries, etc., make financial donations to our food programs. We have a list that's available through our link for social media for folks who might be interested in helping those out. Lastly, on our virus response, the Simsbury Main Street Partnership and Simsbury Chamber of Commerce and our business resource librarian do continue to help support our business community. And our Economic Development Commission was a tremendous help, and they reached out to various stakeholders in the community, such as educational institutions, nonprofit agencies, social service agencies, and that, again, other stakeholders. And they were really determining if there were unmet needs within the community and what those were and how we may be able to assist. So we very, very much appreciate the EDC's work on that front. Moving on to our department news and notes, in regards to our police department, we have received an arbitration decision in the town's favor on the termination of former police sergeant Jason Trombley. A few excerpts from the 25-page decision include: we think that the grievance dishonesty was substantial and that the town has produced a preponderance of the evidence that it had just cause to terminate the grievance. This was the final of 2 arbitration cases involving Mr. Trombley. The other case was also awarded in the town's favor and was reported on in my May 11th, 2020 town manager's report to you all. From the library, again, just reiterating that beginning tomorrow, curbside service will be extended until 8 p.m. on Tuesday evenings to better accommodate our residents' schedules. And a few announcements from social services. Our annual energy assistance program is accepting applications. Social services will be doing most of that electronically, so virtually through email, etc. And information regarding that is available through the report. There will be a number of flu clinics coming up in town. On October 7th, there will be a flu clinic at the fire district. We also will have a flu clinic on October 8th and October 20th, both of those occurring at Ena Memorial Hall. And there's a flu clinic on September 30th that will be in Avon. And lastly, just a reminder that the Farmington Valley Visiting Nurse Association, in partnership with our Social Services Department, is offering blood pressure clinics at Ena with details in the attached. And that concludes my report for this evening.
Okay, thank you very much, Maria. We're going to move on next to Selectmen action. Item A is road acceptance for Murphy's Turn. A little bit of context here. There is a new subdivision at 46 Hildercrest Drive. Currently, 3 out of the 5 single-family homes are built on a short cul-de-sac. Jeff Shea, our town engineer, has reviewed and is recommending that the roadway is ready for us to accept. It's also been reviewed by the Planning Commission and the town attorney. I wanted to see, Jeff, is there anything else you wanted to add before I open up for questions?
Eric, not much. Just that, this is actually one of the first roads that the town has accepted in over 7 years because of the change in the kind of pattern of development. Most of the developments have private roads as being conceived now. So this is a pretty routine matter, but it was, pretty unusual that it's been that long since we've actually done one.
Thanks. Are there any questions from the board? Okay, see if there's a motion. Is there a motion effective September 14th, 2020 to accept Murphy's Turn roadway and related public improvements as a town accepted roadway?
I'll move that. Mike.
Second.
Mike moved, Sean seconded. Any further conversation? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Aye.
That motion carries. Item B is the proposed updates to the Teen Services Librarian classification. This particular position is currently vacant, and as is the practice with many vacant positions, staff conducted a review of the current job description, and they're recommending some changes based on how that position has changed over time. And they're also recommending that we raise the classification by a level, which would have a budgetary impact of about $5,000 a year. This has been reviewed previously by the Personnel Subcommittee, I wanted to see if Lisa Kareem, Library Director, had anything that you wanted to add.
Well, I think what I want to add is that when this position was reinstated about 5 years ago, we had no idea what the need or demand would be for teen services in town. And from that position being reinstated 5 years ago, the position itself grew into what it has become today, which is a much more autonomous position than it had been when it was created. What we found is that the demand for teen services was fairly high. And that's basically why this is being requested.
Thanks. Are there questions on this submission? Okay. Is there a motion effective September 14th, 2020 to approve the proposed changes to the job description and pay grade for the teen services librarian qualification as presented?
So moved.
Second.
Any further conversation? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, that motion carries. Thanks, Lisa.
Thank you.
Thank you, Lisa.
Item C is tax refund requests. Is there a motion effective September 14th, 2020 to approve the presented tax refunds in the amount of $22,291.45 and to authorize Town Manager Maria Capriola to execute the tax refunds?
So moved.
Second.
Second.
Is there any other conversation? All in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay, that motion carries. Item D is a proposed public gathering permit application. So the Public Gathering Committee has approved the application for the Melon Farmers Free Concert that's scheduled for September 27th at the Performing Arts Center. I just want to see, is there anyone from the Performing Arts Center that would want to speak on this one? Okay. Were there any questions from the board on this item? Okay. Then.
There were no questions from the board as far as the committee is concerned.
Okay. Thank you. Is there a motion effective September 14th, 2020 to approve the public gathering application for the 2020 Melon Farmers Free Concert and to authorize the issuance of the public gathering permit for the event?
So moved.
I'll second.
Any other conversation? All in favor?
Aye.
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 Anyone opposed? Okay, that motion carries. Item E is the one that Maria touched on a few minutes ago, the extension of temporary suspension of the acceptance of cash payments. That's a mouthful. So with the start of the pandemic, the town generally has not been accepting cash to curtail the spread. Instead, we've accepted credit cards, debit cards, and checks, and staff is recommending that we continue the practice through the end of the year. Maria, I didn't know if you wanted to elaborate a little bit on how it's been working or anything else.
Sure. Just again, quickly, it's gone relatively smoothly. We only had one resident express concern about it while we were in the middle of tax collection season, and it was regarding car taxes, not residential property or personal property. But again, we had very good, stable collection rates, and it really just wasn't an issue. So, brought this concept back to the leadership team and our division heads who accept payments, and folks were supportive of continuing and felt that it had done what it had intended to do, which was to cut down on transactions. Again, those in-person transactions and the exchanging of cash, and that it was helping to minimize the potential spread of the virus. So, would like to proceed with that through the end of the calendar year.
Okay, thanks. Are there questions from the board? Is there a motion effective September 14th, 2020 to extend the suspension of acceptance of cash payments through January 1, 2021? Exceptions may be authorized by the town manager or finance director, and further to waive transaction fees of $5 or less through January 1, 2021 if check or electronic payment is not practicable. Aquatics fees, food concession transactions, and all golf course fees and purchases valued at $5 or less should not be waived, and this shall remain in effect unless revised or rescinded. Is there does anyone move that?
Move that with the addition of anything having to do with the hockey rink as well, if that's not going to be incorporated in there.
Okay.
Okay.
Chris, is that a second? Anything anyone else wanted to add? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Okay, and that motion passes. Item F. Thank you for hanging in there with us, Amy. The next few items, Amy is going to walk us through. Amy Meriwether, Finance Director, starting with the year-end financial.
Hello. So I have some good news to share with everybody this evening. So I will just get started on that and move things along. I'm going to share my screen. Okay. So go all the way to the bottom. All of these are in your packet. I just thought I would screen share so it's easier to see and kind of walk you all through. So these are your general fund revenues as of the end of the fiscal year. And all the way at the bottom, you'll see that our revenues exceeded our budget estimates by about 1.4 million. If you scroll up here, you'll kind of see the reason why, or the main reason why, I should say. Over here under the finance department, one of the main drivers related to this is an unbudgeted bond premium that we received related to our last issuance. So the bond premium was in the amount of $1,021,940. So this is money that we receive up front, and it's supposed to be used to pay off the debt service as over the years of the debt, which we incurred. Another area where we saw excess revenue is the tax department. So this is something that we typically see every year. We have our tax collection rate budgeted at 98.5%, but we know we typically collect at a rate of 99.5%. So there's typically about $400,000 or $500,000 that we collect in excess. So that incorporated with some interest and lien fees is your $600,000 in excess of revenues. Down under the town clerk's office, this $123,000. This was due to some conveyance taxes and recording fees that were above budget, and this was related to the pandemic when the interest rates went so low. People were refinancing their mortgages. There was a housing boom, and so we were able to gain some excess revenue there. We had some additional permit closeouts during the year in the building department for some of our larger projects. So we had excess revenues of about $97,000 there. And then the last thing I just wanted to point out on the revenues is this transfer in this designated fund balance. So when we developed our budget, we were going to use about $850,000 of our fund balance. And due to the excess revenues, we did not have to use any of that, which is some good news. So that's the revenues. Moving on to the expenditures.
Amy, can we go back and touch on that for just 1 second?
Yeah, sure.
So that means if you can scroll down to the fund balance you just showed. So there's the 850 is still in the fund balance, right?
Correct.
And we're adding another 1.4 to it.
On the revenue side, yes.
Yeah. Okay. So up over 2.2 million. Improvement in where we budgeted from a fund balance standpoint, right?
Correct.
Thank you. Okay.
On to the expenditures as of June 30th, starting all the way at the bottom. You can see that our expenditures came in well under budget by $1.5 million compared to the $101 million that we budgeted for the fiscal year. So here, the majority of our savings is from salary and benefits. If you kind of scroll through, a lot of the line items, you'll see $100,000 here and 100 there, but there's really nothing that's like extensive where it's like, oh my God, where did $1 million come from? It's various salary and benefit line items. So during the year, we had vacancies within the police department. We had vacancies in planning, engineering, library, dispatcher, the assessor's office, finance, and buildings and maintenance. So there's tons of staffing transitions during the year. We had some retirements, we had some lags in hiring due to COVID, and we also had some staffing transitions. Another area where we saw some salary savings is the elections budget. So as you may recall, because of COVID, we canceled the referendum, and therefore we did not have to pay workers that would typically work the referendum. Another area we saw savings is the highway department. From our very mild winter, there was a lack of storms. So due to that mild winter, we had some savings in our overtime in the highway department. And then also in the police department, we did see some savings in their seasonal line item. This is where we pay our crossing guards. And since school closed, we no longer had to pay the crossing guards. And so we had some savings there. And then the last area that we had some savings is due to our union contracts. So our union contracts and negotiations started in fiscal year 20, and it was anticipated that they would be negotiating closed by the end of the fiscal year. However, because of COVID, a lot of the negotiations got pushed off. So for the employees that are currently still in that negotiation status with their unions, those employees did not receive their steps and they did not receive their GWI increases for this year. So it's not a true savings, because when those contracts are closed, those funds will be paid out in fiscal year 21 as soon as those contracts are closed. So that'll be included as part of our year-end transfer discussion later on. Another area that we saw some savings is on the Board of Education side due to the school closings. So they had some closing of their buildings. They had some facilities and utilities cost savings, transportation cost savings, things of that nature. So they had about $266,000 in savings. On our pension side of things, our valuations came in favorable compared to the initial budgets that were provided by our actuaries. We actually had savings in this line item of about $100,000. So that was pretty awesome. And then the last thing I wanted to touch on, the only line item that was over budget, was our legal services. And this is something that we had kept you abreast on when we were talking at our quarterly updates. So this is something that we did anticipate was going to go out of budget or go over budget for the contract negotiations and some of the terminations that the town was working through. Any questions on the expenditure side of the general fund, or just the general fund in general? No? Okay. Moving on to Simsbury Farms. Order over here. Simsbury Farms closed the year with a very small deficit of about $8,000, so $8,100. So you can see during in the revenue in your fiscal year 20 compared to your fiscal year 19, under the recreation programs, we had an increase compared to fiscal year 19 of about $100,000. So typically most of our special programs and day camps are run in the summertime. So COVID did not have a chance to impact these programs. So we got lucky where we did get the excess revenues from the early start of fiscal year 20. We'll probably see an impact to those in this current fiscal year. But for fiscal year 20, we did pretty well. Within the total Simsbury Farms complex is the loss of $40,000. Again, this is mainly related to COVID when we had the skating season in the wintertime and our buildings were closed. And then the Simsbury Farms, the pools, the opening of the pools as well was not only delayed, but we have to be at a minimum capacity. So we did get a shortage in revenue there. However, on the golf side, as you can see, the total golf course, the revenue compared to fiscal year 19 was an increase of $215,000. People were definitely utilizing the golf course more often during COVID, one of the few things that people could get outdoors and do. So you'll see the majority of this increase relates to the golf course charges and then the golf surcharge as well. And then the general fund transfers in, the $180,000 was within budget and what we projected during our budgetary season. And then this additional transfer in fiscal year 19 was to close out their loss at the end of the year. So this additional $436,000 is a lot more than this $8,000. So compared to last year, we're definitely in a much better position than what we were the year before. The golf course on the expenditure side compared to fiscal year 19, we purchased a tractor in the current year. So that's why that variance is a significant increase over the prior year. And then the other significant decrease you can see here is in our special programs line item. And this was related to an elimination of a position during the last budget cycle. So overall, you can see our net change in fund balance is the decrease to $8,100. We do have funds that are designated specifically for golf. All of these surcharge accounts are just reserved for golf to use. So if we take out the designated funds for golf, our unassigned loss for the fund is about $15,000 to make it whole. Any questions on that? Okay. Moving on to the health insurance fund. Our health insurance fund, despite COVID, had actually a very good year. Our net change in fund balance was an increase of $2.1 million. You can see the majority of that here was a decrease in expected claims. And because of COVID, a lot of doctors' offices either weren't taking appointments, elective procedures were delayed, people just weren't going to the doctors, dentist office were closed, things of that nature. So we did see a significant dip in our claims. And actually, we just had a meeting with our locked in our benefits advisors. And Simsbury actually has the lowest amount of COVID-related claims compared to all of our peers, which I thought was pretty cool and interesting. So we're in a great position as far as COVID goes as well.
Sorry. Quick question on the claims. Do we anticipate a longer tail in the current fiscal year? We're going to go back up for those missed appointments and otherwise?
Yeah, so when we talk to our benefits consultant, I just think, naturally, as people start to make those appointments again, get those procedures done, we are going to see an increase. But they didn't feel like it was going to be anything exuberant.
Okay.
But yes, we definitely want to keep an eye on that. Let me see where I left off. The other thing I wanted to point out is we had a couple high-level claims during the year as well, which hit our stop-loss insurance. So you'll see this insurance refunds line item for $256,000. We were able to recoup some of the costs related to those claims. And then the last area is the premiums, which you'll see came in under budget by about $631,000. And this is just due to all of the staffing transitions where we didn't have people employed by the town or the Board of Education, since this is a shared fund. So we just didn't have those premiums. And the last area I wanted to talk about on the health insurance is your reserve. So this is your reserve that should be 20 to 25% of your expected claims. Here you can see it's about 29% of expected claims compared to budget. I did it as a percentage of budget and not our actual claims because we know our actual claims are low because of COVID. So right now we're a little bit higher than what our target ratio of the 20 to 25% should be. However, like Sean said, we are going to expect to see an increase in claims in fiscal year 21 due to people going back to the doctors, getting those elective procedures done. And so we'd like to keep that cushion there for now and see how 21 plays out. Any questions on the health insurance fund? I won't take you through residential property. There really wasn't anything major there. The last large fund is the sewer use fund. And here you can see that there was an increase of about $462,000. The majority of this, or half of this, I should say, relates to an increase in the WPCA fees compared to budget. And then there are several small, again, salaries and benefits, but several other smaller, they came in under budget. So nothing major here, just a lot of small variances, but just wanted to point out, since it is one of our major funds, that there was an additional increase for this year. We have the sewer assessment funds, special revenue funds, trust funds, and pension trust funds that are all in your packet. I won't go through them. There's nothing really notable in them, but if you have any questions, I can take those. Okay. So then moving on to hold on, I have to not screen share. And then re-screen share. Okay. So there is a motion in your packet related to the year-end financial results. And this is also in your packet, your year-end budget transfers on the budgetary basis. So this is something that we have to do for the audit. We need to true up what our budget was to basically our actuals. So here is our final budget, which is actually our original budget because there was no supplemental appropriations during the year. And this is where we landed on our actual results. So what we do is we make our original budget, our adjusted budget, and that's what goes through the audit. So as you can see, when we true it up, there's no longer any variances in any of the line items. And then you'll see the Board of Education has its surplus, the town has its surplus, which equals our expenditure surplus of the 1.5. So if you, Paul, could make a motion on that and approve those transfers for me for the audit.
Are there any questions for Amy before we do that? Okay. Is there?
Maria, this is a good thing. So well done, Amy and Maria and everyone on once again managing the finances of the town extremely well.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I second that. Is there a motion effective September 14th, 2020 to approve the schedule of year-end budget transfers as presented?
I'll move that.
Second it.
Any other questions? All in favor?
Aye.
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 Anyone opposed? Okay, that motion passes. Thanks, Amy. So the next item is G, the proposed general fund and capital transfers.
Yeah, so now what are we going to do with all this money? All right, so if we took a look at where we are as far as fund balance goes, you'll see our fund balance started at about 16 million. And then you'll see here, this was our increase in our revenues. This is our increase in our expenditure savings. So here's our total increase to our fund balance before we do any transfers, is about almost $3 million. And then our fund balance at the end of fiscal year 20 is 19,521,000. So if you can see, if we put all of that money into our general fund balance, our unassigned fund balance would be at about 19.25%, which is a little high. If the state's looking at our fund balance or there's other uses for it, we should probably be a little bit lower, and I'll go into that in a minute. So we're going to make some proposals as to what to do with this money. So here is the chart that is also in your packet. So this is what we're proposing to transfer out of the general fund. So first we have the Simsbury Farms deficit, that $15,000 small deficit to make that fund whole, so it's no longer in a deficit position. We have a transfer request into the capital projects fund for the Hopbrook Landing irrigation. I'm not sure about Board of Selectmen, but I know that some Board of Finance members had received some feedback from the public about the grass over in this area and how they would like to see an irrigation system be put in due to the dying grass, because we've had such a dry summer. So that was $10,000. We have the ice rink condenser and the rink control panel. We just went out to bid a few weeks ago on these projects, and they came in significantly over budget. So in order to complete these projects, we needed an additional $60,000. So that's to make these projects whole. Another transfer into the capital fund for the Public Works utility van for $46,000. You might remember during the budget season that when you all were prioritizing your capital projects, there was some areas that you needed to cut. And this was one of those areas that you cut in anticipation of using year-end savings to be able to make this purchase. Another one is a transfer to the capital projects fund for a public works truck. Tom Roy has a building and maintenance truck that just broke down probably about 1 or 2 weeks ago now. They looked at the cost of repairing it, and it's not worth, I guess it's not worth it to repair it in his eyes. And so he is asking for additional funds to replace that truck. There's a transfer here for the Board of Education non-lapsing. So this was the amount of the savings that the Board of Education had related to their COVID in fiscal year 20 and closing all of the schools. They are requesting to be able to keep that money because although they had savings in fiscal year 20 related to COVID, they are having significant COVID expenditures in 21 in order to get the schools up and running again and to accommodate distance learning. We're asking for a transfer to the Capital Reserve Fund in the amount of the bond premium that I mentioned at the beginning when I was going through the general fund revenues of that $1 million. So we would like that to go into the Capital Reserve to use it appropriately and offset future debt service payments. And then this last item is the Capital Reserve Fund, which I was talking about when I was going through the general fund balance and how we're at about 19% here. Which is a little high. So we would really like to move out everything from the general fund that is going to be above and beyond 15%. The Board of Finance will be looking at their fund balance policy tomorrow night. And in their current policy, it's anywhere between 15 to 17% is the target for the general fund balance. So they'll probably make some adjustments to that number based on what they approve in the policy. But this just gets the general fund balance down to that 15% level. The 15% comes from our debt advisor. He let us know that all of the AAA bond rated towns are at about 15.5% general fund balance. So we'd like to transfer the remainder, anything above and beyond the 15% into the capital reserve for future use. So any questions on these sections of transfers out of the general fund before I move on?
I just have a question. Oh,
sorry, go ahead, Wendy.
Yeah, as a first time going through this, it's a little quick, a lot of moving dollars. So just to ask, these capital fund items, so were those like on our capital non-recurring list, and we're just getting money now to pay those down or pay for those? And are they all current requests that we had already?
So this one, the Hopbrook Landing irrigation is not a current request. That would be a new project. And that was based on feedback that the Board of Finance was getting. The rink and the rink control are already current projects that have already been approved, but the bids came in too high. So we didn't have enough money. So in order to complete those projects, we need additional appropriations. The public works fund is already in your capital plan, and it was discussed during the budget season at the last budget season. There were some items that you all were going to cut and use year-end savings. This was one of them.
Okay.
And then the public works truck is just timing. That would be a new capital request for a truck that just happened to break down a few weeks ago.
So is anything jumping the list, like from the priorities we set at the budget? I guess is, you know what I mean? The items that we prioritized.
So I guess the Hopbrook Landing irrigation project would be something that was not prioritized. And then when the public works truck broke down, that was not part of the list as well. So it would be those two items.
Amy, let me jump in. So everything that we budgeted is paid for. The rink and the rink controller, we budgeted for, Wendy, and we prioritize those, and there's not enough money for them. So these are as if we were starting over. Everything that we prioritized last year is paid for. So now it's
right.
These were, so if we paid for 1 through 10, these were 11 and 12.
Okay.
And then 13 and 14 if you include Hopbrook and the public works truck. And had the public works truck broken down during the budget process, we probably would have prioritized it higher. Maybe, you know. So it's kind of funny. We do this every year.
Mm-hmm.
Call them pennies from heaven. Call them what? It's the safe way to make sure that we're going to hit the year at or better than budget. And then the Board of Finance has traditionally let us clean up items that we cut, not unwillingly, but didn't really want to cut, but did for the sake of the budget, with hopes that if the funds came in the way they did, we would end up buying them at the year end.
Okay, thank you.
And then the only other thing I wanted to say, so the 1 million bond premium and the 2.4 isn't actually money that's being spent, right? I mean, it's just being moved to a designated fund. It can always be undone, and it still needs to be voted on by our board, the Board of Finance, and within the budget process for use, right?
Yes, that's correct. Actually, that's a really good point. I did want to mention that. So one of the benefits of putting, so the bond premium is to offset future debt payments, which lowers our operating expenditures.
Yep.
But the capital reserve for the future capital, like Sean said, it's not being appropriated to any sort of project. It's just sitting basically in a holding tank waiting for you all to use it. And as you know, we're backed up on our capital plan and things that should be getting done in a timely manner. And we're going to be going through the facilities project to find out additional things that need to be done within our facilities. So we're going to need that money eventually. So one of the benefits of putting it into this capital reserve is, first of all, when the state asks for us to give them our general fund balance numbers, they won't be able to see this money, if you will. Because if they see it, I was chatting with, I think it was Mike Paine the other day, and he told me that a few years ago that the state had requested the fund balance levels of communities, and if you had too much fund balance, you were actually going to be penalized for it. I didn't know that, so I thought that was interesting. So that's one of the reasons to move it out. They could also reduce your state funding if they see that you have too much fund balance. And then also putting it in the capital reserve, it's not like you're putting it in a fund where it's a trust or I can't think of anything off the top of my head, but a trust or a reserve where you can't get it back. So if we decided that during the budget season, our operating budget was in the hole by, say, $500,000, and we really just want to offset the mill rate, we can always take this money and move it back. So there's no restrictions if we put it into the capital reserve. It really is at the will of the boards to use when and how they see fit.
Question.
Yep.
So thank you, Amy. Just thank you for somebody's clock there reminding us that we've been on the Zoom now for 3 hours, and we literally will be on for 2 more probably. That's not, the public, so I don't want. But for the public's information, just explanation, and you may or may not have this detail. The 60,000. I don't care about the expenditure for the rate control and the condenser in the sense whether I questioned it or not. But $60,000 is a lot when you think of budgeting. So, is it because the budgeted numbers were budgeted based upon estimates from professionals internally, or were those budgeted numbers numbers that came from an estimate from an external contractor? And if so, do we know, is it because the prices of the product went up? The contractor was a less than reputable contractor, or because additional work beyond the scope of what was initially believed to be for completion, that additional work came into play? Any perspective on that?
Yeah, so just initially, I can look into the specifics more with Tom Taberski, but I know that when they originally did the estimates, I believe they were just internal estimates that were done by our staff and team. I don't think that they got quotes from an outside vendor, which is why they ended up coming in. The quotes ended up coming in a lot higher than anticipated. I'm not really sure what the methodology was behind the budget numbers. I can find out and send it to you offline. But I know there was no increase in work. There was no vendor projection that was used.
Okay.
Yeah, I think it was just our internal assumption as to what the work was going to be.
Fair enough.
Tom can add to this a little bit.
We don't need to.
Just really quickly, the on the ice rink condenser, there was a consulting fee that the engineering department said, we used that consultant to come up with the specs. So we had under budgeted for that. We didn't account for that at the time when we put that estimate together a year ago. And with the ice rink control panel, we did speak to a contractor about a year and a half ago to get that number, and it just rose on us. Whether it's materials or whatnot, it just we used 60,000 and it came out significantly more than that through the bidding process. But yeah, I mean, if you have any questions on that, I could speak to you. We did consult the companies that we use for our maintenance to get those numbers, and again, they're a year and a half too old, old in one case and a year old in another case. But we did the best we can at the time to put those numbers together.
Thanks, Tom.
You're welcome.
Thanks, Tom.
Yeah, we should probably start talking about maybe an escalator for some of these, Amy, because I think this is not critical. You guys are, there's two of you or three of you managing 100 different capital items when you include trucks and everything else. So I get it that this is an imperfect science, but maybe with the rink stuff, a 10 or 15% escalation in some of these because the bids have aged or because of the thought, the timing is aged in the future. If that makes sense, Amy.
I was adding that to his.
Just because, again, not critical, but in my time, it's been these types of one-off projects. The trucks we generally know, right? But the things around ice rinks and Zambonis and different things than our normal purchases, there tends to be more variance in the price. So maybe just again,
Yeah, we could definitely do that.
And again, I'm not looking to pad the budget, but if we're not sure. Much like when we do a building, there's a 5 or a 10% contingency, right?
Mm-hmm.
So
Sure.
maybe it's appropriate for more of the non-standard purchases.
Any other questions on the transfers from the general fund? Okay.
I think this is a creative use of funds again that doesn't tie our hands both short and long term. So I think this makes a lot of sense.
Would agree.
Transfers to the general fund assigned fund balance. So these are just some transfers that will go into the general fund. They will go into the fund balance, but they will be assigned for a specific purpose. So your first one is the unsettled union contract wage increases that I had talked about as part of our savings in the salaries and benefits line. So about $182,000 in step increases and general wage increases that we're projecting to happen upon the when the contract negotiations resume, and then where they end up. So for the fiscal year 20 impact that would be paid out in fiscal year 21, we're anticipating about $182,000. There are also some smaller items that got cut from the budget last year. That staff had requested that just didn't make it in. One is a human resources certification course that our human resources coordinator would like to participate in. It's about $1,300. And then our assessor would like to take advantage of an intern for on a temporary basis for about $5,000 in order to get their system up to date with some data entry. Currently, they're behind in their data entry from the planning department and the assessors department. The two systems don't speak. And Francine is very much about using her staff to capture new growth, staying on top of businesses, changes, things of that nature. So this would just help with some of the lower level tasks that her and her staff are currently struggling to get to. This will resolve itself. The planning department is getting a new permitting system, and this new permitting system, once installed within the next couple months, actually talks to the assessor system. So there is no more data entry. So this would just be a temporary, some temporary relief to get them through that process. And then under here, we have the fund balance summary. So here you'll see the net increase to fund balance before the transfers, the proposed transfers, and then that would be an overall decrease to your fund balance. So here's your fund balance at the beginning of the year, your revised decrease to the fund balance, and then your revised decrease, your ending fund balance as of June 30th, 2020. And then I just have the breakdown down here. The non-spendable is anything that was prepaid at the end of this year. Your assigned fund balance is all of your encumbrances. There's also $18,000 in this assigned fund balance for your EDC materials that you assigned last year that were not spent this year. So that will simply carry over into the next fiscal year. And then the remainder is just your unassigned fund balance.
Amy, if I summarize this from just simple terms in my head, you're essentially recommending that we move the surplus from this year and also move basically the $850 that we had budgeted last year that we didn't move.
So we're moving the surplus from this year.
Yeah.
included in the 850. So basically we're taking anything in fund balance that is above the 15% and we're moving it all out.
Yeah. So remind me, is the 2.9 inclusive of the prior allocated 850 or not?
The 2.9 is not. That's all.
So when I looked at the 913, I was basically rounding that to 850. I know it's not the same, but
Yep.
So essentially we've just moved it forward a year.
Right.
And I guess my point is we're arriving at the same fund balance point that we thought we were going to be at when we started last year.
Around there, yeah.
Give or take a few tenths of a percent, right?
Right, and then the tax collections as well played into that. So.
So I guess at the end of the day, while there's a lot of math here, there's a lot of numbers moving around. This is it's not a massive change from where we thought we were going to be, and it's on solid footing from a recommendation standpoint.
I agree, Sean, and I have no issue. But maybe this is where you need to jump in and give me a history lesson, because we didn't know that all of this revenue was going to come, but we knew a large part of it was because we budget for a collection rate, which we know we're going to exceed. Mm-hmm. Wouldn't it be more transparent if we budgeted for many of these things as part of the normal budgeting process?
So it's not that it's not transparent. It's essentially the way we've always done it. And to me, that's where the transparency is this is not out of the norm. And that, like we were talking about with the prior items, there are items that were vetted and discussed within the budget process. So, it's not extraordinary. The bond premium was known and it's an appropriate movement. The future capital, again, it doesn't hamstring us. We can always move it back. Essentially, we're moving it from one savings account to another, just getting closer to using it for capital. And we could go either way with that. But to Amy's guidance, again, we need to be mindful, and we're not hiding anything from the state, but at the same time, they can come in and sweep our fund balance, right, Amy? I mean, they have the ability to do that if they pass legislation.
Honestly, not sure. I haven't heard of that, but
that's what we were afraid of years ago when they first started having budgetary issues. Is there was at least, I believe, one senator talking about sweeping rich towns as he put its fund balance, which who knows if it's legal or not, I guess. But that was what was on the table that I think Mike was referring to previously.
Okay.
They can jam us with costs, or the threat was they were going to take our money, basically.
Yeah, Sean, I'll just add quickly to that. There was a formal request from OPM to all municipalities. I believe it was sometime in the fall of 2017 timeframe, where on behalf of the governor, the then governor, they were asking communities to provide various information on their general fund balances. And sort of that was the word on the street, was that, hey, be careful, towns that have managed yourselves in a very financially responsible way, because if your fund balances look to be too flush, they may, penalize you in some way, whether it was a reduction in municipal aid or something of that nature. So that was definitely out there just fall of 2017, so about 3 years ago.
Yeah, that's thank you. That was the gist of the memory there. So, so Eric, and again, I know we use the words transparency a lot. It's one of the challenges is, as we've all learned. I mean, we're running $100 million machine here, right? That things do change and things pop up. So a public works truck, a couple of an ice condenser being over budget, and a couple other small items. I mean, they're not even material from an accounting standpoint, right, Amy?
Right.
I know they're real dollars, and I'm not saying they're not important, but we're not moving millions of dollars of missed expenditures around, I guess is my point, or filling in poorly done capital plans where we're missing them by hundreds of thousands or millions of dollars. And that would be a lack of transparency, Eric. If we said something was going to cost $1 million, but we knew it was going to cost $1.5 million, and then we came back and moved 500,000 after the fact into it, that wouldn't be something we should be doing.
Yeah, I think so maybe the word transparent, Eric may speak for, is not really the right term. I think as I pick up on the same thread, sometimes it's a bit frustrating. Amy, you made the point of 7 years of coming in under budget, so to speak, on the forecasting for tax revenues. I mean, at some point, I think that needs to be reconsidered. What is the value of doing that? Yes, there's always the boogeyman around the corner and the what if, but you've got a pretty good trend going. So that's number one. And it's a bit like going into the forecasting season for the guidance that we get with the presentation of a hard number of known cost increases that are going to be fixed in a budget, and then getting a guidance that's less than that number. To me, these are kinds of things that you're working backwards from. So I think that's sort of my thoughts on adding to Eric's statement. May not be exactly what he's thinking, but that's what I'm thinking when somebody pushes that forward.
Yeah, I mean, let me say it a different way. Amy, correct me if I'm wrong, but 615 of the 2.9, right, was the delta in collected versus budgeted from a tax standpoint?
Right.
So 2.3 million has nothing to do with the collection rate. Right, Amy?
Yeah, no, don't get me wrong. I have no issue with anything that's been presented. It's
Yeah,
more-
no, again, I you know, the collection rate, and the problem is we're in politics, right? So if you give us an extra 600,000, we will spend it. So this is essentially forced savings that then goes through another review process before we're allowed to spend it. So if anything, it's potentially more transparent again, because we've got to do this. We've got to tell everybody exactly what it is, where are we not, and then goes through a review process again with the Board of Finance. And I'm not taking exception, Eric, with your point. With your use of transparency, I get what you're saying. But
it might have been the wrong word. It's just that most things in our budget reflect what we actually think is going to happen, whereas we know our collection rate, what we budget for, is not going to happen. That's all.
Yep. No, it's a fair point, and there's different philosophies for it, but and at the end of the day, this really has nothing to do with it for what Amy's asking us to do. Other than there's extra money as a result of it, right? But we're not sitting here advocating that we necessarily go spend it on something. We're actually talking about just moving it to a different savings account.
Right.
No, I'm very good with what's been presented. I wanted to see if there were any other questions. And Amy, was there anything else you wanted to add? I don't know if we.
I don't know if you wanted to do general fund first, but I still have capital transfers as well. Okay.
Yeah, let's review that.
So on the capital side of things, we had a project for the sewage plant H2O system rehab, which came in with a very small savings of about $900. So we'd like to transfer that back to the sewer use fund, which is the original funding source. The transfers between capital funds, if you recall during the budget season, when I talked about the public works utility van that we were going to use year-end savings to purchase, this was another one where Tom Taberski had let us know that we were going to have some a pack fencing project of about $33,000. You guys hear that? It's so bad. And
You'll all have it at home. Don't worry about
it. Sorry.
I just happen to be sleeping.
And then, so we were going to use that $33,000 in savings to allocate $25,000 towards playscapes and then $8,000 towards rink fencing. So that was part of the year-end discussion, or the budget discussion. I'm sorry. And then the last category here is the transfers to the capital reserve. So these first two items are the ones that we talked about with the general fund transfers. So this was the transfer into the reserve to get our fund balance down to that 15%. And then here's your bond premium, which we put in the reserve to utilize to pay down debt service in later years. This next one, the Eno Memorial Hall Special Revenue Fund, the Board of Finance had me go through an exercise of going through all of our special revenue funds and giving the history, the background related to those funds, and recommended that we close out the Eno Hall Memorial Special Revenue Fund. The money can only be used for improvements to the Eno Memorial Hall. So they requested that we come up with a use of this fund so that we can close out the remaining money available. So what we'd like to do is transfer this money to the capital reserve fund as assigned. And we would like to use that money for, there's some Eno entrance and ADA compliance needs over at the Eno Memorial Hall. Typically, we were waiting for, we have a Belden Fund trust and we get distributions every year. We've been building up money in those trusts in order to be able to do this project. But since we have this money available now, this will put us where we need to be to at least start the project, if not finish it, and then maybe have a small balance for the trust funds to have to use. So that's what we'd like to do with these monies and close out that fund per the Board of Finance request. The last few projects are just some projects that were closed out during the year that just had some minimal savings. The high school had a turf field project that had some savings. A generator project had about $250 in savings, and then some equipment purchases from the CNR fund had about $40 in savings, so nothing major there. Any questions on the capital transfers? And then the last set of transfers for this evening, let me just stop that. Go to okay, is the private duty fund. So again, when the Board of Finance had me go through the exercise of looking at all of our special revenue funds, what they need, what they should be used for, the restrictions, things of that nature, I found that the police private duty funds, the original intention was to close out this fund at the end of every fiscal year and put it into the general fund. So we had proposed, and the Board of Finance seemed to be in agreement with, instead of putting it into the general fund, since the general fund balance definitely doesn't need it, that we would transfer the money to CNR. So at the end of the year for this year, we have a couple requests that we would like to take advantage of these funds and then transfer the remainder. So just to go through this pretty quickly, at one of your meetings, you had a proposal to purchase some body cameras and dash cameras, which you actually did approve, and you sent on to the Board of Finance. So this cover sheet was requested or was created as part of the Board of Finance requests. So just one quick update to this is one of the sergeants, I believe, had reached out to the state, and we can get a 50% reimbursement on the purchase of any body cameras and dash cameras. Or no, body cameras, just the body cameras. But if we waited until the state was going to make it mandatory, we would only get 30% reimbursement. So these funds are on a first come, first served basis. So we'd like to take advantage of that sooner rather than later. So that was just a quick update on that. In addition to the body cameras, we'd like to purchase 3 admin vehicles. So the police admin vehicles are not something that were included in the capital plan. And they're kind of, there's 3 that could come out of service. So we would really like to take care of that backup, if you will, replace those 3 vehicles and then get them on a regular schedule within the capital plan. So the purchase of those 3 admin vehicles, we're estimating to be about $138,000. So if you go down here to the financial impact, the private duty fund currently has about $400,000 in it. The cost of the admin vehicles, about $138,000. And then the cost of the car and body cameras, about $115,000. So this leaves a remaining fund balance in the private duty fund of about $150,000. And we would request that that $150,000 be transferred into the capital reserve fund to be assigned and used for police use going forward per the guidance of the Board of Finance. Any questions on this? This is my last, I promise.
Has this been reviewed by the police commission?
I think Nick hopped on.
Yep, I'm here. I am here. I presented to them tonight that this was going before the boards, and there was no objection to it. They're in a full 100% support of going forward with the cameras, both the body cameras and the in-dash cameras. And the last time that we spoke about this, they were very pleased with providing as much savings to the town as possible.
Okay, thanks, Chief.
Amy, just a quick question. So, I mean, we're basically, we're closing out a fund and then moving money into another fund and then designating it, right?
Mhm.
Is this more complicated or less complicated?
I mean, it's more complicated, but
Yeah, so what, I guess
the fund was created and it's the Board of Finance gets to set the rules around the special revenue fund, and this is how they want it to flow.
Yeah, but I mean, again, just fast forwarding to a year from now, we're going to need an abacus and a star chart to explain all the designations within the funds, right?
Yeah, I would have to track those, yes.
And then everybody's going to have to, but looking at it, it's not going to be apparent. Whereas today you can see that the private duty fund has X, right?
Right.
In the future, you will have to wait for an update and accounting of it. It won't be apparent or transparent to a casual individual to understand where the money is or what's designated or what's not.
Right, so you'll still see the private duty fund during my quarterly updates. You'll see the revenues and the expenditures for the year. But as far as the remaining balances at the end of the year that are moved out, you will not be able to see a cumulative total of those balances without asking me.
And then you'll have to open it, or it'll be in the cap, or presumably a year later, under in one of the notes with what's designated and what's not.
Exactly.
Yeah, so you got to read on page 87 of 127 to find it. I guess my question, it's all accounting, but it seems like it's making what's already confusing even more confusing. So I'm fine with the use of the funds. I'm questioning why we're essentially trying to close out the private duty fund every year and bury it in another fund, and that doesn't feel simpler to me. So the Board of Finance has the authority to set funds, but they need us to initiate the transfer, correct?
For a special revenue fund, I'm not sure. I'm pretty sure under the guidance, under the charter, the Board of Finance has the authority over the special revenue fund.
They can move it in and out without a motion from us?
I'm not sure on the special revenue fund.
Okay.
I just know that they can designate the purpose. And initially, when this fund was created, it was the Board of Finance that designated the purpose at the end of the year to be transferred into the general fund and closed out.
So that was the stated purpose originally?
Right.
Okay.
So I guess these funds were originally budgeted in the general fund. And then because of the volatility in the revenues and the private duty every year, it was difficult to budget that. So that's why they created the private duty. So the intention of the previous Board of Finance was to track these revenues and expenditures in their own separate fund, and then anything that was income would be transferred back to the general fund at the end of the year. That was the original intent.
Okay, it's so simple question just for educational purposes. I'm not going to hide that that's also for me. Not based upon or concerned with, pardon me, with how easy or difficult it will be to track this going forward. But for the public, what creates revenue or income for the private duty fund?
So it's literally all of the private duties that our police department is hired to do.
Okay, so that's so simple. Thank you. So then my concern here is that we have this conversation like around Parks and Rec to a certain extent. So this is, let's just call it public safety monies deemed for generated by a public safety function. And in theory, we're not a revenue producing, we're not an income producing, revenue producing entity. So therefore, I would hope that the intent is for those monies to go for continued public service, public safety, pardon. So if you move it away and it becomes part of a larger amorphous fund, will it be designated in there as a line item that whatever is moved over, it grows, it has debits and credits to it each year, fed by the same mechanism of private duty, and then therefore those monies would be continued to be used for public safety, or are we now moving those over and they can be used for anything? Is that clear?
Yeah, I know what you're saying. So originally, I don't know if it were me setting up this fund way back when, the revenue generated from this fund would go back to the police department. They're generating income for a reason, because the officers are using their uniforms, they're using their vehicles. It's all the police department's wear and tear on their equipment, their supplies. And that's why we don't just charge them what we charge. We don't just charge them the police overtime rate and break even. We charge them a premium, so to speak, because we're using our equipment and all of that stuff will need replacement down the line. So if it were me, and I don't know if this was the same train of thought, but if it were me, that would be the train of thinking as to why we're creating income in this fund, is to help the expenditures with all of the wear and tear on our equipment. So I was actually kind of surprised when I saw that the intent was to move it into the general fund. And I believe that the Board of Finance wanted the freedom, if you will, where we can transfer it into capital because the general fund balance doesn't need it, and it can be assigned for police use. But if the time does come where, say, Public Works needs it or the library needs it, they can unassign it and use it for the town as a whole. I believe that was their discussion.
They can unassign it?
And
yeah. So if they have the authority to do this, then we'll let them do it. I mean, I'm only one vote, but I'm not in favor of basically zeroing this account out. I'm in favor of the two uses of funds. But once this money leaves here, it becomes susceptible to being used for beyond its stated purpose, which, as you articulated, doesn't seem right.
But we're not going to change the process tonight, correct? I mean, you're saying maybe the process should be different, but.
No, they're asking us to change the process tonight.
So this is new. This has never happened. We've never transferred it back before. It's the first time.
Correct.
Now,
It's transferred back, just not from this particular fund.
Right. So the history of this fund kind of came to light when the Board of Finance had me do the research on all the special revenue funds. So what Sean mentioned, like, say you purchase the police admin vehicles and the car vehicles at year end, that's within the normal course of practice. But transferring the money out of this fund, that $150,000 into CNR, is what has not been done before.
But the Board of Finance asked to have it done, right?
Right. Correct. So you all can approve the purchases and then not transfer the remaining to the capital reserve and just leave that for the Board of Finance tomorrow night.
So is it possible to, I have to say, I don't recall the conversation around the Board of Finance doing this. I don't question, and even for a second, the level of competency or decision-making of the Board of Finance at all, and far more capable in the position that I am. But so is it possible to make the transfer, but talk further? Is there any value to that to the rest of the board members to talk further around the understanding of their thought process around closing and compressing the fund in a conceptual way? Is that of value to anybody else?
That would be a value to me.
Would love to do it, but I think what I heard a little while ago is they don't actually need us to do this. They can do it within their own authority potentially. So.
I mean, we still have the discussion. You guys could approve the purchases and not the transfer, and then we could leave it for the Board of Finance agenda tomorrow to express your concerns and put it on a future agenda for discussion.
That would be my preference tonight if the rest of the board's comfortable with that.
Yeah, and I'd like to frame, like, before we possibly reframe the word transparency, I don't necessarily have to concern. I don't feel like maybe I just missed that day in school. So
No, the Board of Selectmen wasn't part of that conversation. You didn't say anything. That was.
And again, I'm not being flippant, but I do have a concern because if we're moving the money and it can be used for purposes outside of the police department, philosophically, I don't agree with that. And again, I'm only one vote, but and I would want to talk to the Board of Finance about their underlying intent. And is it to use it for the rest of the town, or is it to continue to have it designated for the police department? Because I think that's an appropriate use, given the way Amy indicated that, I mean, it's not income, it's paying for the wear and tear on our vehicles and our equipment.
Yeah. To me, it's not there's, you have the fire tax, right? Here we go, tangent time. At the fire tax, we have this big outflow of income from taxpayers into an account, which doesn't have a great deal of transparency and optics into it, in my opinion. Yet it is completely controlled by an entity outside of our control, and the money is 100% designated for their purpose and their use, without any shared transfer. So it's sort of a bit like that. If we've got things over there, to a certain extent, around public safety, which is of the utmost value. This is, to me, the same. This is a micro example of that event occurring outside of our budget.
I would be in favor of spending the money for the vehicles and the body cameras and stuff to get that done now. I think that's a very good thing, but I am uncomfortable with cleaning out the rest of the fund at this point till we talk to the Board of Finance.
Okay,
yeah. I think just to add on to Mike's, it's not about concern or comfort, or if we are going to generate revenue off of private duty, and it's going to continue to flow into the general fund, then I'd like to, that really is what's driving my request, just for a better understanding. If we were going to shut down the concept of revenue earned off of a service, then I wouldn't care about it going forward. There would be a reason to shut the fund down.
Understood.
Thank you.
Then I'll bring this up tomorrow night, and then in the meantime, we can research to the actual transfers. I know under charter, they have the authority to create the fund and determine the specifics and the use of the fund, and we can get better clarification on the appropriations from the special. That'll give me some time to do that as well.
Thank you.
Eric, if I could just quickly add, and I'm sorry to go back a little bit to a question that Sean was looking for more clarification. During some of the Board of Finance discussions on this topic, some members did bring up that, if we do it as they've recommended proceeding, that in theory, the Board of Selectmen during budget season can prioritize, and maybe they'll choose to use police private duty funds on other capital needs that aren't police department related. I think from my perspective, we again have recommended a different approach in terms of if they wanted to account, for the police private duty funds, because we know now that we've developed our 6-year CNR plan, the police department has a large number of smaller dollar value capital needs that are under $250,000. And that's just ongoing and routine, whether it's, bulletproof vests, fingerprinting machines, vehicles, all of those things are smaller CNR requests. And it's so highly unlikely that the police department's capital needs would be lower than what we have available in the private duty funds. So I'm just sharing with you, when I'm developing budget, if we are sort of required to proceed in the manner as the Board of Finance has recommended, that it would be very unlikely for me to actually recommend as part of budget development using police private duty funds to fund capital needs that aren't police related, just because there's already so much need there. And I think Chris made a point and described it very nicely that this is not general fund taxpayer money. This is revenue being derived from a fee that we're charging for a service. So again, we know we have in the larger context, so a backlog and so many small capital needs in the CNR fund. And we're going to have to pay for those items. And we're going to require and need general fund dollars to pay for those other items and other departments. So if we have this revenue source that our taxpayers aren't having to, essentially pay for this, it's taking pressure off of the mill rate, and it's allowing us to pay for those other smaller capital needs. To me, it's a no-brainer. So again, I just kind of want to share my philosophy with you all so that, during budget development, you're not surprised if you're not seeing me recommend other uses outside of the police department for the police private duty fund money.
Okay. Thanks, Maria.
You're welcome.
Is there any other questions before I move ahead with a motion here?
Do you want to take this motion separate from everything else there, just so it's clean?
Yeah. So let me see if I can word it right. Is there a motion effective September 14th, 2020 to approve using private duty fund for the purchase of an admin vehicle at $138,000 and car and body cameras at $114,580?
And I'll just move that with the clarification that it's 3 admin vehicles.
Oh, yes. Thank you.
We're not buying a Ferrari here.
Thanks.
And I'll second it.
Okay. Is there any other questions or conversation?
Okay, just a quick question. So you're going to table the transfer of the balance till after it's presented to the Board of Finance? We're just approving the purchases?
Yep.
All right, so you're going to approve the purchases, and then when I speak to the Board of Finance tomorrow night, I'll let them know your action and let them know that you did not approve the $150,000 transfer and that you'd like to have a further discussion before that transfer is made.
Or if they have the authority to do so, they can just do it tomorrow night and they don't need us.
Right, and then you can all discuss it later.
Yeah.
Thank you. Second.
No, we've got it moved and seconded.
I'm still going to say it. Okay.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Anyone opposed? Okay, that motion passes. Thank you. And before we lose sight, I
You
think
can do the rest of them.
I need to go back to item G, which is the general fund and capital transfers. Let me see if there's a motion effective September 14, 2020 to approve the general fund and capital transfer request as presented.
Moved.
Second.
Any other questions or anything anyone want to add? Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, that motion carries. Item I, and I see that we have Attorney Bob DiCrescenzo on the line. The next couple items are proposed settlement agreements from pending tax appeals. And I wanted to ask Bob just to high level walk us through the proposed agreement with C-Tech Solar, which owns the solar array on top of the International Skating Center.
Yeah, it's a tax appeal that they brought some years ago. This settlement covers 4 grand list years. And can we pull up the document to look at it? The 2017 grand list year, they appealed, and you'll see the proposed reduction on the stipulated judgment. 2018, they did not appeal, but the Board of Assessment Appeals granted them the reduction to the number that you see on the stipulation for judgment. 2019, the Board of Assessment Appeals also reduced their assessment, and the proposed settlement number is about $5,000 below the Board of Assessment Appeals number. And then 2020 is taking the Board of Assessment Appeals approach to valuation and applying it to the 2020 grand list. So we will settle this long-standing tax appeal for the personal property assets that they own going back to the 2017 grand list year. And in your packet is an estimate of the revenue loss over those 4 years. And the condition of me signing the settlement agreement will be that they bring the taxes current, which they are in arrears, but they can bring it current to the net number, meaning what they owe minus what the credit would be for the settlement. Francine, anything you want to add to that?
No, I'm just going over. I have pulled aside my spreadsheet here, the hypothetical, what we came up with.
Yep.
Adjusted amount, if we did agree to this, and the cash due taxes. Actually, as David, the past assessor, had mentioned on this, because this has been in the works for several years now, the time frame on this, the installation and the statutes changing, they're just off very slightly where the whole thing could have been, exempted. So
yeah, they installed it in October. Had they waited the January 1st, it would have been tax exempt.
Yeah.
Are there? Sorry, Francine.
No, go ahead.
I just wanted to see if there was any questions from the board. Okay. Anything else, Francine or Bob, that you wanted to add?
You see from the memo, the financial impact over the course of the 4 years is relatively modest. We hope it's a way. The bigger victory for us would be to get the taxes paid, back taxes paid current, and to resolve this tax appeal. And the two are tied together. I'm not going to sign the stipulation unless the tax collector tells me that they're paid in full for the net amount. It will allow them to deduct the net adjustment. But it's our oldest tax appeal, and it would be a benefit to the town to resolve it and set it aside.
Thank you. Is there a motion effective September 14, 2020 to approve the attached settlement agreement for the tax appeal on the personal property located at 1375 Hot Meadow Street as presented, and authorize Town Attorney Robert DiCrescenzo to execute the agreement?
So moved.
Second. Jackie can have.
Any further conversation? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay, that motion carries. Item J is a proposed settlement agreement with Willow Arms Apartments. Bob, is that another one you could just give us a high-level overview?
Yeah, this is the only multifamily property in town that's subsidized by HUD and CHFA in the form of equity to the property in exchange for caps on rents. And the rents are fixed at 30% of area median income. It's a benefit to the residents because there's sort of a rent freeze in place. What that does, however, is it lowers the valuation of the property because the lower rents result in a lower valuation. The other side of it is because it's administered by CHFA and to some extent HUD, there's a higher level of expenditure in terms of required maintenance, reserve for maintenance, and other reserves that they require. The property owner estimates the expense ratio to be about 85%. We think that's a little high, but it's not extraordinarily high. And the number that's in the stipulation was a number that our appraiser felt was a fair resolution of this tax appeal, meaning that if he were to produce his appraisal report and if we were to go to trial, the number he would put in his appraisal report would be roughly in this range. So it's a fairly substantial reduction, but the reduction is justified by an independent third-party appraiser who looked at it on our behalf and recommended that we go in this direction. Francine, you want to add to that?
I think you covered it Very well, Bob. Thank you.
Okay. Are there any questions from the board? Okay, thank you both. Is there a motion effective September 14th, 2020 to approve the attached settlement agreement for the tax appeal on the property located at 55 Elm Street as presented, and authorize town attorney Robert DiCrescenzo to execute the agreement?
So moved. Second.
Any further conversation? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Anyone opposed? Okay, that motion carries. Thank you for your work on this, Bob and Francine.
Thank you for your support.
Thank you.
Item K is proposed amendments to the tax credit for elderly and disabled homeowners ordinance. So through ordinance, the town offers a tax credit for elderly and disabled homeowners who meet certain income requirements. And the state recently made changes to the statute regarding this program. So the objective in amending the ordinance is to ensure that the eligibility requirements are consistent with what's in the state statute. Maria, is there anything you would elaborate on here?
In a nutshell, what the statutory change did is it made certain trusts eligible to maintain the tax benefit. These days, a lot of seniors are putting their property in different forms of trusts. And the legislature, starting in October 1, 2019, authorized or actually required towns to accept these trusts as eligible for the tax credit in the same manner as a natural person. It requires the tax assessor and town attorney to examine the trust to make sure it's the type of trust that's eligible, but it's actually required by state statute at this point. And the other three changes are to corresponding language in the definitions and eligibility requirements.
Since this is an ordinance, it would require public hearing. So that would be the action we would take tonight, is to schedule the public hearing. Any questions on this from board members? Okay. Is there a motion to schedule a public hearing for 6:00 p.m. at the Board of Selectmen's regular meeting on September 29th, 2020, to solicit public comment regarding the proposed amendment to the tax credit for elderly and disabled homeowners ordinance?
So moved.
Second.
Any other conversation? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Okay, that motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Bob.
Item L is the proposed disposition of a portion of open space. So a little bit of context and history. The town was approached by the owner of 133 Holcomb Street, who was interested in purchasing a portion of open space adjacent to his property. The sale was requested as part of discussions related to the potential purchase of an easement at the Old Well property along 315, where the town is interested in building a bike path. We have the opportunity tonight to vote on this proposed sale. I just wanted to provide a summary of steps that have been taken to get us up to this point. The proposed sale was forwarded to the Planning Commission, Conservation Commission, and Open Space Committee. All of those committees gave positive referrals. Not unanimously so, but the consensus of those committees was positive. We also had two public hearings, the Board of Selectmen, May 27th, and then a second public hearing on July 13th. Between those two public hearings, we received, I want to say, somewhere around 40 letters, so some fairly robust public comment. I wanted to see if Mike Glidden or Maria wanted to add any additional context before we open it up for conversation. Okay. I wanted to see if there were board members who wanted to share their thoughts. This is something we've been talking about for about 6 months publicly, and I'm happy to go first, but I wanted to open up the floor.
Eric, I'll go. It's Mike.
Okay.
I am in favor of this. I think it fixes a situation that we had created internally with how we took open space or assigned open space in the past. And we do have these, what I will use the word orphaned pieces that are really landlocked that you cannot get to, the public cannot get to. I think it is a good solution to that situation.
Thanks, Mike. Maria, can I just ask a question as far as process goes? If we move forward tonight and authorize you to negotiate with the homeowner, will we have an opportunity to review the final agreement? Would that be a sort of a final step in the process, or would this be our last opportunity to have a say in this?
Sure. So, because we would still be discussing, potential purchase price, I think that there may be an opportunity to still continue to discuss an executive session. And I think that any final agreement we would definitely bring, any final tentative agreement we would bring before the Board of Selectmen, as we do with other agreements, and ask for you to approve it prior to me executing. So I would definitely envision any version of that agreement coming to you all again, as well as any finalization of price, trying to work through that with you all in executive session. I would defer to Bob if he feels differently about the piece about price executive session, or if he feels that maybe, again, if Bob has a different opinion, I would defer to him on that.
No, I agree. I mean, negotiation could be reviewed in executive session. Once we agree on price and go to contract, then you do that in public session. But yeah, you absolutely can have another look at it and another say as to whether or not to go forward with the transaction.
Okay.
That would be consistent with how we handled the Hudson property, right, Bob?
Yes, that's right.
I mean, we basically said, yeah, we want to do it. And then we went to work on negotiating it. We came up with the price, and then we came back and voted on it with it because it was a real estate deal, right?
Yeah, what I'm hearing is you want to do it, provided the terms of the deal are acceptable.
Yep. Yeah, and there was some questions previously about transparency and otherwise. There's no official contract or deal that's in place at this point.
No, there isn't.
Nothing to show the public in terms of how much everybody's paying for it. And I think that's been part of the confusion.
Yeah, there's not even a draft contract at this point.
No, we're not hiding anything here.
Sorry, go ahead, Chad.
No, I know it's confusing for folks because Eric, it's a great question. It's like, what are we actually doing tonight, right? And there's like anything in government, it takes us 9 steps to do what most people in the private sector do in 1. So, but it's all for the right reasons, right? We have to be transparent. We have to go through a process respectfully and the right way. So.
Well,
ahead,
I'm sorry, Wendy.
No, you can go first. I can go after.
Okay. I'll share. I am inclined to support this proposal for a number of reasons. One is when you look at the particular history of this parcel, the rules at the time required that a portion of the land be set aside for open space, but since the 90s, those rules have changed, and in lieu of setting that land aside, the developer now the applicant has the option of paying a fee in lieu of setting aside that space. So if this happened now, I don't know if we'd even be talking about this. Also, this particular parcel of open space, to be clear, is not accessible to the public. It is surrounded by private property, and the only way to access it is to trespass on someone else's private property. I also hear clearly the members of the open space community who say that there is still value in these parcels, which I agree with as a corridor and a conduit for wildlife, which is why I'm supportive of creating a stipulation that nothing can be built on this parcel. As it's been pointed out that no abutting property owners have objected to this purchase. And I also think that this decision does the most public good. When we think about selling a small parcel of open space that's inaccessible to the public and negotiating an easement along Route 315 that will be benefiting hundreds of people every day during the summer months who use the bike trail. So for those reasons is why I would be supportive of this.
So when we originally heard this, it was presented as a kind of a swap for the easement, which made it attractive in that it benefited the town and it benefited the landholder, and giving the benefit of the landholder buying the open space, was outweighed by the benefit to the town. On its face value now, it's just the sale of the open space in Steve's yard. And, I know Steve, he's a really nice guy. He's a great business partner, but on its face value, I don't feel it's appropriate to set the precedent just for this specific parcel of land, for this specific instance, without any relation to the easement act, that we had originally talked about. And even when Dave Bush spoke today, he was all about the easement, being related to this, and it's not. I mean, if we read the item on the agenda, it's not part of it. So that's why I plan to vote no. The only thing that I would suggest is in the future, potentially, we come up with a policy for all these 22 orphan pieces of land and open that up to the 22 people that abut those properties and offer it to them to make it fair to anybody that's in this same situation who we don't happen to know about tonight. But
Wendy,
I'm just letting you know, I plan to vote no.
Thanks, Wendy. And I think that I agree with the project you suggest around having, working with the Open Space Committee to have a position on those so-called orphan parcels. Again, another process question for Maria. Can these be negotiated in collaboration with each other, in connection with each other? The purchase of this parcel of open space by the homeowner and the sale of the easement.
Yeah, well, they're technically two separate matters. Again, I think that, Bob, if you think we could do it as one agreement or as two agreements, but I mean, it's definitely been part of the conversation. So I do think that we could certainly, convey to property owner that if, one doesn't happen, the other won't happen, sort of a thing, and really stress the importance of the easement.
We can make them contingent on each other.
Mm-hmm.
Like when you buy a house, it's contingent on you getting a mortgage, that kind of condition to the purchase and sale.
Okay.
It can be tied together, but you have to vote to allow the sale before we can do that, which which you're contemplating doing tonight.
Right, because then we go to work on the contract with all those stipulations, right, Bob? I mean, at this point, it from a technical standpoint, it hasn't been part of the discussion because there's no contract negotiation at this point, right?
Right. After, if you vote in favor here tonight, then we can go to the next step and put together draft contracts.
So yeah, let me say it another way. I mean, Wendy, when it comes back, and if the easement is not part of it, we can all vote no and it's dead. Is essentially the way I hear this. If that's what we want in the final agreement, by moving it forward tonight, all we're doing is basically telling Bob and Maria to go negotiate a contract.
But in print, yeah, I understand that, Sean. I'm just saying, in principle, for me, we're saying okay to the sale of the open space. So,
with whatever conditions we want, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, thanks. And anything anyone else wanted to add before I see if we can introduce a motion?
So I've studied this. I haven't studied it. I've intently listened for better part of a year about the potential of this, and it's a difficult, imperfect situation. And sometimes I use that statement too often. And I've talked with a lot of people, and on this, continuously trying to present the situation in an unbiased fashion and not have the inflection in my voice lead anybody to determine which way I'm leading, but really asking for their perspective. Up until tonight, what's going through my head is hearing each of you share your points of view. as we collectively try to do what's best for the town. And just for the record, I don't feel there was true transparency from the beginning from the landowner on a few things. That pushed me in a certain direction for a while. I also don't believe that taking the property is essentially would be costing that landowner any great value to their business when you see the plan. But it's also important to me to think about two things right now as I counterbalance some statements and some thoughts. One is we're talking about spending additional taxpayer dollars. When we looked at that line item tonight, and that's what really jumped out at me, we spent $150-something thousand of taxpayer money on legal process. All well spent, but completely unfortunate. What could we have done with that $158,000? I don't want to get to the point where we're spending $100-something thousand to litigate this project going forward, when the spirit of it and the intention of what we're asking for, the use, is something so positive. That would be so unfortunate, number one. So I don't feel, especially this time when we have so many other potential capital investments that we're going to be asking the town taxpayers to make, if we have the opportunity to offset that burden and use whatever dollar is for that project towards something else that could be so meaningful. That's one counterbalance. The second counterbalance is that for whatever, I think that the word orphan has been overused far too many times, and it was used to almost to an incendiary manner. And I really don't appreciate that at all, and the way that it was described. We could have all used better language to have a better dialogue around it. And the last thing I'll say is that on the other side, let's try to consider this project as open space. And although the other overused word was precedent, and that's a big boogeyman word in many people's eyes. It's like, what could be that's going to come from precedent? All I ask is that we sort of, for the folks who are concerned about precedent, is that we try to bend our head around, our mind around, is that while it could be something of a concern in your mind about taking away open space, think about the intended use for this. It's for recreation, it's for health, it's to possibly take somebody's car off the road so that a pollinator pathway someplace is allowed to be established and wildlife is allowed to live someplace. So that, to me, those two counterbalances, the fact that we'd be relieving taxpayer money and considering when we're looking at the holistic sense of what we're facing as a society, and the fact that while it could be precedent setting, it's not precedent setting for anything other than my mind than open space, the concept of use for humans, for the good. So I'll stop there. Thank you.
Yes. Anything that anyone else wanted to add? Okay, I'm going to attempt a motion here. Is there a motion effective September 14th, 2020 to approve the sale of a portion of open space located along the rear eastern property line for 133 Holcomb Street, and authorize town manager Maria Capriola to negotiate a sale price with the property owner of 133 Holcomb Street? Further, stipulate that the agreement should contain a provision that prohibits the construction of any structures on the parcel. And in addition, stipulate that the sale should be tied to the purchase of an easement along Route 315 for the construction of a bike path. I hope I captured that.
Yeah, I'll move that with that addition, Eric.
I'll second.
Is there any further conversation? All in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed?
Still a no.
Okay. The motion passes 5-1. I wanted to thank staff, this board, and most importantly, our residents who have participated in this process up to this point. It's been it's been a long road. Next, we have appointments and resignations. This first one is tough because after serving 26 years on the Aging and Disability Commission, where he served most recently as chair, Ed LaMontagne recently shared with us his desire to step down from the commission. I wanted to see if there's a motion effective September 14, 2020, to accept the resignation of Edward LaMontagne as a regular member of the Chairman of Aging and Disability Commission, retroactive to August 14, 2020.
So moved.
I'll make that. I'll second it with regrets.
Yeah.
All in favor?
Aye.
Reluctantly. Aye.
Agreed. Next is a proposed appointment to the Police Commission. The Republican Town Committee is recommending Travis Schweitzer, I apologize if I mispronounced his last name, to fill the remainder of the term of Jim Fleming, who recently resigned. Is there a motion effective September 14, 2020 to appoint Travis Schweitzer as a regular member of the Police Commission with a term expiring on January 1st, 2021?
I'll move that.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay, that motion carries. There are minutes from 3 meetings. Are there any proposed changes to any of those meeting minutes? Okay, then they'll stand. Is there anything under communication in that section of the packet anyone wanted to raise? Okay. We have 3 items in executive session. Is there a motion to adjourn to executive session to discuss the golf course lease? We would be joined by Tom Taberski, Maria Capriola, and Bob DiCrescenzo. The second 2 items, we would be just with the board discussing the town manager's contract renewal and the town manager's annual performance review.
Move that.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right, everyone. Thank you.